We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rating Show here on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. It is Sunday night, 7 p.m., 12th of May, 2024. Pommy, we've got technical difficulties at BAHQ, but the show will go on. I'm hoping you can hear me.
We can. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. So there's no internet in this house. Hasn't been any internet for the last hour. So we're hotspotting off the phone. Who knows what will happen, honestly. Maybe this is the end of the world.
Could be. I mean, I'm on Starlink, so I mean, like, we could go through a nuclear holocaust and now have internet.
Great. Well, at least one of us will be here for the show.
We can do end of the world watch along with Pom.
Yeah. Armageddon abroad. Let's go. Oh, dear. Well, anyway, welcome. Good to have you. Of course, we are brought to you by Horizon Finance Group, the great man, Nick Horsburgh, who has gotten behind this show, which we appreciate. Mate, it was a big win, right? It was a good win.
Mate, 4 points secured, locked and loaded, tucked away at Prince's Park. You can't even get how good's a win? Let's be honest. Wins are good.
Nothing beats a win. You weren't, I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I felt the stress a little bit towards the end, but, you know, I think the learning is, wow, you can play really good for three and a half quarters, and you can undo that all in 15, there's 20 minutes of a quarter in this league. That's the league that we're currently watching right now. That's how tight it is.
Yeah, I mean, Geelong celebrated their win. Adelaide celebrated their win. Collingwood celebrated their win. And so, I mean, 2 of them clubs are in the top 8, well cemented, aren't they? And Adelaide just drew just as we went on air with Brisbane. So, I mean, it's a tough league, man. Like, if you're not 100%, you're going to get battered. And if you are on, I mean, I look at it this way. I think if you cosmetically break it down, 2 quarters probably shaded to us, but the first quarter we played perfect football. We won 36-0. Yeah. 4th quarter was all them. We won the game. So both sides played one fantastic quarter. Our first quarter was better. So, I mean, you take what you can out of it. I mean, Vossi said it himself. It was going to be tight. And historically with us, it has been tight, hasn't it? It's been like a frog's bum. Watertight, them games. So we go again. Hey, do you know what I mean? Big task now, Sydney coming up. And if you win that, I mean, Jesus, you're talking flag in the press, aren't you? If Carlton win against Sydney, that all next week will be flaggers in the media.
True. Well, this is the ratings. If you're new to the ratings, welcome. If you are a returning viewer of the Rating Show, welcome as well. If you are a returning viewer of the ratings and you think somebody might enjoy this show, share it with them. Get them involved. We're about to go through each and every single player that played on Thursday night. We're going to look through their game. We're going to look through the key stats that make up their role. And we're going to compare them to every player in the competition in the same role. And that's how we will generate their score. I mean, what else do we need to know about the algorithm?
Sexy. Yeah, pretty much you nailed it, Terry. Yeah, they're playing against themselves and the boys in their respective positions. And this is going to be a nice little test of the algorithm this week because it's very similar to last week, if you remember it. So that's always an exciting thing. So we'll be looking at it this week and we'll be really learning something about these boys, which is what we want to do. We always want to learn about the boys. I think it's always important to see what we can pick out. But there's some real telltale signs in how Carlton won this week.
Okay. All right. Well, should we start?
Be my guest, as the candlestick said.
We should start. Let's begin. Alrighty. So let's start as the backline was named. Whoop. Where's number 1? Well, Jacob Wiedering gets an 8.
There. Yeah.
Let's talk about leaders.
Yeah, you know, dog's admin on mine, and for some reason, sometimes when you upload them, it shows half of them because he had them
Right.
on half of them. So I don't know what goes on the stream yard, but here's Jacob Wiedering, as you can see, 1-on-1, 100%, very good, return to form, 5 spoils, led the team in intercept marks. Carlton again showcasing, trying to play this guy loose. And I think it's really evident. I don't know what chat thinks and you feel, Terry. When you've got this gentleman with Kemp and McGovern, it seems to be his preferred pet trio. He seems to be a lot more free. He looked relaxed. He ran in. He ran hard. And he really took the game on.
Yeah. This is one of his better games for the year, wasn't it?
100%. I mean, I think he played his opposite man really cleverly as well. I think the Blues got the defensive matchup spot on. It has to be said, Melbourne's probably a key forward away from challenging, which we seem to have been saying for 2 decades. But he can only play what's in front of you. And I thought that Carlton really did. This game's more of an awkward matchup for Carlton's mid-sized players and smalls. And I thought Wiedering's ability to really show almost a lack of respect for his opposite man and be willing to peel off. Like you see them almost perfect 4 dots. 2 of them are intercept marks in the right wing, which we're going to talk about a lot, about his wing play and that right wing and left wing are going to get a workout this week. But he was willing to chase up the ground as well. So this is a really important factor next week against Logan McDonald and players like that. They like to drop deep. So it was a good little practice for him because next week is going to be a bit of a tougher, but the matchup remains the same for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm with you when it comes to, I mean, you can tell who's got the synergy with who on the field. I think also factor in McGovern, who we'll touch on shortly. So experienced. Wiedering was seemingly covering for a few guys the week before against the Pies, but it definitely had a sense of comfort knowing who was around him and how they like to move because they've practiced together a lot.
Mate, amen. And I think part of it is, just playing together as well and creating that synergy. It's a trust element. People forget Lewis Young is what Lewis Young is. So. Yeah. He's today, this week, you're judging him on he's comfortable that the other 2 can play the ball as well. So I think all 3 of them really complement. To me, the dream pairing is Kemp, asterisk Marchbank, but I'm not 100% convinced on it. Kemp, Marchbank, and then McGovern and this guy. I think that is the perfect 3 out the back. But Young obviously comes into the conversation because 2 of the 4 we've named there are seriously injured.
Yeah. So an 8 for Jacob Wiedering. And he's now put together a couple of weeks of really strong performances. And we're going to move on. We're going to look at Brody Kemp, who came back into the side, looked a lot more comfortable than what we had seen in the team prior to him coming out.
He did indeed, and you can see here. So, obviously, one thing that went against Wiedering wasn't quite as aggressive this week. He wasn't quite as aggressive this week. Kemp was charged with more getting the ball out, which I think is a really interesting little gambit there. Strong in his intercept possessions. Carlton really did exploit this from Melbourne. And again, Kemp really growing strength to strength, backed up his VFL. His VFL was a really, really good game. It was a really good game the week before. There was a few comments about him getting beaten and goals going against him in the VFL. But if you actually watch that game with your coach's head on, you could see that Mr. Kemp in the VFL was told just to attack the ball and kind of sack off defending. This week, we saw the benefits of that because he was flying for marks, taking really strong 50-50s as well. 50s are contested intercept 50s as well. He's really gone one-on-one and won the ball and was willing to give a little bit of space, which is a high risk, high reward. But they did target him. And this is really interesting. Kemp is used to being targeted. And there's another player that gets targeted that Carlton basically went bold with. We'll talk about him a bit later. But look again, this right wing, Carlton knew where it was coming. They knew that the left flank of Melbourne's is a big area. And Carlton duly put their big boys and their most dangerous players out this end to try and tempt the beast. And it worked a treat for 3.5 quarters.
Yeah. We didn't do media watch this week, but did you see the title of the article, the faker, the AFL faker, laying into Brody Kemp for that tackle?
Sorry, I just totally missed my mouth with water. I did see it, yeah. It's an interesting take. I don't think he faked it. I think it was very unjust. But I mean, at the end of the day, what I find fascinating about the media is that they're saying that the umpiring is shit, which I think we can all agree. And a lot of 50-50 penalties don't go for you. So you're also saying we don't want people to simulate. But I would also argue if the umpires aren't going to give them, what do you expect the players to do? But in my opinion, you can't say that. You can't say that he milked it. He's got no previous for it. And for me, it was an act of football. It was the tackle that made it appear like that.
Great tackle.
Good tackle, but I just think Kemp, momentum does a wonderful thing. He's a big cumbersome thing, Kempy. People forget he's not small. So if you tackle someone big, they usually go down in a shit heap.
Yeah. No, I like it. I just think we quickly forget how early he is in his career, but I think he's on the journey. He's on a good trajectory. These are important to be playing. So I like this game. He scored a 6, which we love. It's a regulation 6.
He does.
Let's go over to McGovern. Wow, our first goal was all I needed to see. You know when like a really important player comes into your side and they have a moment in their return game and you're like, oh, it was our first goal. The first passage of play with McGovern and how quickly he makes the mental switch from defense to offense. Sorely missed and a really solid game.
Solid game. And you can see here from how Carlton used him. So last time we judged this gentleman, Carlton played him very similar to Kemp. And a credit, I'm a firm believer that you've got to be equalisations in your criticism and your praise. And last week, I think very fairly, Voss came under a little bit of duress. He did certainly from me for trying to help his players out. Yeah. This week, it was a real return to form for Vossi in helping said players out. And he switched Kemp and McGovern round. So McGovern now played deeper. And as you can see on his heat map, a lot more deep than Mr. Kemp, which is unusual because you'd expect him to play higher up the ground. But what this enabled him to do was, we talked about it, their defensive half transition is one of the best in the league. Carlton are a forward half defensive team. And what this allowed Carlton to do was really try and be a bit more shallower and drop back a little bit to entice them into these entries. And McGovern lurked in this pocket of space and killed them. 425 metres gained, top 3. Intercept possessions, as you'd expect, killed it. 2 of them intercept marks. And again, this is another little aspect of Kemp and Mitch McGovern, right? Mitch McGovern, both of them are very handy on the ground. Yes. And no one talks about it. Genuinely, when you watch Lever got caught a cropper a few times on the ground, and Carlton actually brought Corey Durdin against him, knowing a weak area of him is if they went low, the guy's useless. He's got no bottom half. Same with Petty. McGovern and Kemp, they can play on the deck as well, which is why Carlton play that high spoil game that we talked about. And he mopped up whether it was on the deck or whether it was in the air. McGovern was a threat and probably the most important cog, because I don't think Carlton have a natural Mitch McGovern.
No. Is that something that Brody Kemp can aspire to try and become eventually?
I think he could. I think he could. I think, though, for this to work, you have to play one big, two mid-sized players. And I know everyone froths Marchbank, but you've only got to watch his VFL this week, right? And watch it intuitively. It's tough for both of them to be the same, for all three of them to play in the same team, because I think the Kemp, just his point of difference, allows Gov to be Gov and Wheatering to be Wheatering. So I think ideally, in an ideal world, Carlton would like to find a Dan Curtin in the draft, which is obviously impossible. He's a top 10 pick, but there may be that medium-sized fish out there. And it's one of the funny things, if you watch any of my draft content coming up, we talk about this, that the day of the 200-centimetre tall is dying. And they're all starting to fall into that 190, 195 range. Everyone's getting smaller because of this, because it's such a fast-paced game. So be interesting. But if Mitch McGovern stays fit, there's not many teams that can cope with it, because, like I say, Kemp and McGovern, freaks of nature, that they can play below the deck. So a lot of top teams, Fritsch does it a lot, brings it to ground. He did it a few times on Kemp, and Kemp killed him because they can play low as well.
Is it too simplistic to say that our rebound/transition game will improve when we've got McGovern and Sard back in the side?
Yeah. I think what people... you see, for me, this is a real dangerous thing, and it's why I split up my turnover into the three passages, because the turnover score, some teams have been forward half turnover. So a team like Richmond, who everyone benchmarks on, were a back half turnover side. They used to sit off and want you to slingshot inside 50, and then they killed you on the back. Carlton are a total different kettle of fish. It's not forward half turnover that generates it. It's the midfield half turnover. That's where Carlton's strength is. And this week you saw them sit back a little bit, which allowed them to play just outside of halfback, as opposed to Geelong, who were playing in the midfield. And that was an intuitive change, but it was allowed by the fact McGovern's here, because if they did happen to get a long bomb over, game over, he intercepts. Where the couple of weeks before, it was just Wheatering. And Wheatering can't defend, but also can't intercept. He can't do both, because it's suicide if you do that. This week, they had three avenues to intercept and do it. But Sard obviously is a threat. But I think you saw this week, that's all due respect to Sard, he's probably less important to your system than Mitch McGovern is, because it allows the other two to be defensive and that, and you can probably manufacture the zip off halfback. So it's going to be very interesting when Sard comes back, because someone's going to lose their job, and probably there's no one worthy in the back line at the moment of losing their job.
That's going to come up shortly. Can you click on number 6?
I can do. I do
so
anything for you. Do anything. Right here, yeah.
Is it in there? In your, or was it
no,
not
that
in
one
there?
wasn't for some reason. It was when we first went live, though.
A 7.5 for Gov. Very solid.
Very good. Is 7 there?
7 is here. I'm pretty much good for the next 10 that I can see. Let's move on. Cincotta. Wow. Doing a bit 2 weeks in a row. Doesn't happen often. Let's talk about Alex Cincotta.
The Pom Dog. What a player. Just firstly, just quietly, is Alex Cincotta. And as you can see here, Carlton this week really learned a valuable lesson of playing players to complement them. And Cincotta was in that real hot zone where they like to attack. And he was charged with a young gentleman called Keziah Pickett. And he gave him a handful. 1%ers, second in the team for that. Again, spoils. And what really helped him out this week is the fact that his players with him were really, really good below the deck. So when he did get his hand there first, he had 2 or 3 backups. Now, there was a great incident last week where Cincotta did this trick to try and just spoil the the ball as it comes in, and poor Lewis Young kind of just stood and watched him. Do you know what I mean? Just watched it happen, where Kemp and McGovern both are very reactive. Tackles strong again, and again, intercept possessions. It's very interesting this week that Carlton learned the lesson last week about being a little bit more bolder in defence. Don't sit back. They did sit back in the fourth, but let's not talk about it. But genuinely, they did well. Very interesting as well that Pickett, for the first time ever, actually went into the midfield and behind the ball at one stage. And as you can see, Cincotta followed him. I'm pretty sure when Pickett had a piss at the end of the game, Cincotta was just guarding the door for him. He was that on him. So it was a great game from Alex. And he has a fair, decent player next week. He has Mr. Papley potentially next week. So could it be 3-3? No doubt he'll get him.
I just like the fact that, he bided his time, got his opportunity. He took it, played a really important role, and allowed the others around him to focus, allowed them to flourish with their offensive flair in the back half or in D50. Now, you chatted to him today. Should I be revealing that? No, you revealed it. You revealed it.
I was going to say, there's a sexy promo.
You put something out about it. So when's that coming up? And when can we watch it? And where can we watch it?
Me and the Pom Cotter, 6 p.m. tomorrow, will premiere. We had a really good chat. It gave us a lot of time. He actually goes into, there's a great question I asked him about how he's converted from an Adam Sard clone in juniors to now, I worded it as politely as I could, but basically the kind of guy that stops good players playing. And his answer is really interesting. It shows you just the type of person he is, of what turns him on and what gets him going in the game, and how serious he takes it, and how he's proud that he's gone from a 30-touch halfback flanker to now a guy that stops you playing. And it talks about the culture shift. So it's really interesting. He takes it really serious, he takes it really serious, locking these people down. It's like kicking a snag. It's like kicking a snag to him. So he takes it in.
How many times do we say that tackling and defense for the most part is your mindset? I think that rings so true when you watch Alex Cincotta play.
It is. He's a fantastic story. I mean, if you think about it, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I do think a part of it as well is he plays players that got the opportunity he wasn't afforded to by circumstance and things going against him. So he's coming up against the guys that are the poster boys every week of what he wanted. So I think there's also an element of a little bit of anger, and he plays angry. And do you know what I mean? He used the phrase to me, he prides himself on every touch you get against him, you've bloody earned it.
Yep.
You bloody earn it.
And
that just turns me on, because do you know what I mean? He's going out there and he's like, right, you're earning this. You ain't beating me. And he talks about when Pickett beat him, and he mentioned Ian Hill last week when he beat him, and how this week he adjusted, and he talks about how he just bumps Fritsch out the way to get to him because he was determined. You ain't getting there. You ain't getting there. You've beaten me, well done, but you ain't getting this goal. When he lays that cracking tackle and stops him kicking the goal. But you can see this guy takes it serious. Like, it's almost like it's a debt in his mind. The way he was talking today, that's what turns me on. It's a debt. You beat him, he's coming for the interest.
Yeah. Well, look, these are important. The 2 games that he's played, and I guess I can only assume he'll play on Friday if he's available and he's in form. They're important games that I think we use as information when it comes to finals, if we're there playing against these top teams, because all of a sudden that you can do a job on Pickett, keep him honest. He's kept Bobby Hill honest. If he gets Papley this Friday night, we'll see how that one plays out. And these are things that are going to be important for us to factor in come team selection in a couple of months.
Mate, trust me, you wouldn't want him to have your job, because I reckon you're going to have to kill him to get him out of that team.
Can you explain how hard it is for a back pocket player, defensively minded player, to score a 7.5?
Impossible, because these players generally are playing on a guy who, to quote Mr. Cincotta himself, they only need 2 minutes. Yeah. And once you can blanket them for 118, 2 minutes there, They've kicked 4 goals. They're the headline tomorrow. So that always goes against you. This is risk reward. This is doing the Casper slide in a minefield.
Yeah.
Basically. So to get 7.5, you're kicking arse defensively. And as you can see by his pomegranate, 0 offensive numbers, really. He is just pure defense. So that's basically like he's maxed out defense there, and nothing sexy about him.
Yeah. So we get to 7.5. Let's move on. Young Lachie Cowan. This is an interesting comparison. So for those who are new, the red pentagon is AFL average. The blue is the player in question. So how do we look at Lachie Cowan's game?
So this was a difficult one for Lachie because he was charged more with doing the extracting of the ball. You could see he was more of a ball user this game. They were trying to get him free. So he did a lot defensively, but he couldn't just get going. And this is probably where he probably will struggle in the setup at the moment, where you've got 3 mid-sized players or 2 mid-sized players and 1 tall. I don't think that works. I've never been a fan of having 3 mid-sized. I think you need a genuine small. And this is probably the role here where Sard will look at it and go, right, this is my natural position. And at the moment, Newman's been Sard. You'd imagine that Nick Newman slides back to this more defensive stopping role, being the hybrid, and then Sard goes back to being the offensive player. But that being said, he did the hard yakka stuff. The 1% is incredible. Do you know what I mean? He didn't quite get enough of the ball and he didn't quite do enough with it. But all in all, this wasn't one of them games where you look at and you go, Jesus, he was shocking. Or you look at and go, Jesus, he was brilliant. He didn't really have a lot to do in the terms of everyone else did it. So this is a lesson. This will be one of them games where Lachie will look at this game and go, right, well, I've learned a lot this week. I didn't get punished and I didn't get rewarded, but I was a part of a big defensive unit and a big defensive push.
I mean, look, he's a 19-year-old kid playing against the Ds on a Thursday night, playing against top 4 sides. It's great experience for him. And yeah, doesn't look like he's afraid of the moment, young Lachie. So he has a 4.5 for this game. Now we're going to start.
Against him, his naughtiness at the start of the game.
Yeah, he was a bit naughty. I didn't mind it though. I know it was a downfield free kick, but I thought Neil Bullen played to it a little bit, put a bit of mail on it. I didn't mind it. Maybe you just got to pick your spots. You got to be careful, but I didn't mind him just wanting to give one to Neil Bullen.
Mate, you've got to. Sometimes you've got to do what you've got to do. And it wasn't. Let's be honest, it wasn't pretty.
Yeah,
but it was resourceful.
Yeah,
wasn't it? You know what I mean? It was resourceful. But Nick Newman, this man goes from strength to strength every week, and this is. In the interview tomorrow, we do talk quite a lot about this guy as well. He brought him up quite a bit just as the benchmark of what he's doing and played down on the halfback flank, covered both. I'm not too sure why your heat map's not updating because the hard copies are. So I'm going to have to check that. But his heat maps, I don't know why it is, but his heat map should be 2 red zones literally at the arc. So hopefully that sorts it out. If not, I'll re-upload some. But this was a real strong game for him. He's really had to change his game from being Lachie Cowan when Sard was there to now being Adam Sard. And obviously different style of player. This guy isn't quick. This guy isn't got the line-breaking speed. So he's got to adjust. And what we've seen with him is he adjusts very well. Was charged with getting the ball out of defensive 50, 90% of the time, like we see Sard. 368 metres gained, which is really solid. That's around the Sard ballpark. But these are the big things here from him. Not only does he intercept, but he also puts a lot of pressure on as well. He isn't scared to go up against these smalls. He actually covered for Cincotta in one of the moments that Mr. Pickett got away from him, and he's boring, really, Newman, because I don't think it's possible for him to score below 7 because he just does what he does every week. And this is a guy who's a high output player, and we paid fuck all for him. It just shows you what another man's trash is another man's treasure, as they say. And Newman's built a career out of himself. Really built a career.
Yeah. So those of you watching at home, this heat map won't exactly be Newey's, but nonetheless, an 8 for his game. I love the moment at the end. We spoke about it on the phone, and I'm sure all of us saw it as well. Directing our own captain, having the trust with one another to get feedback from one another. I like to see that.
Mate, spawn. And I mean, if you speak to any coaches in any other sport, I know a good couple of friends of mine are in the soccer game. And that's one of the things that interested me when one of my mates has moved up to Newcastle, and he was saying that the difference between Premier League footballers and shit ones, like League One and League Two, is the fact they communicate. It's they commentate the game. They are so busy talking about what everyone else needs to do as opposed to worrying about their own game. And it's very interesting that was one of the things my mate told me, that top players have so much confidence in their own game that they don't have to concentrate and be quiet. That's the problem. When you're not very good and young players, they're so focused about what they're doing, they find it hard to be like, can you help me out? Because they're invested. But once you've got that confidence in your own game, you've also got then the ability to say, if you do this, you make my life easier. And then, we all get it easier. So I love that. Nick Newman just telling him, fuck off. Let me. Yeah. And if you see him, it was almost like him saying, let me do it. You get up there. I'll win the ball back. You get where you need to be.
Yeah. I mean, whether we talk about this moment now or with Cripps, maybe because Newman is the one that was actually awarded the tackle, but isn't it funny how things come back and you've got to learn the lesson, or they keep happening to you until you learn the lesson? So the week before, stoppage in D50, Nick Dacos gets free, kicks the game-winning goal. This week, Petrarca looks dangerous. We were ready. We were set up. We had communicated, and both Newman and Cripps were ready for that passage of play. That's really pleasing to see the lesson being learned. I know that it was frustrating that we had given up however many goals, and I mean, at the end of the day, the most important thing is not to lose that game. So I thought that was a crucial part of it.
Mate, Spawn, it gets tough. It's tough out there, and players like Nick Newman, with their ability to lead and pass on the information, makes Lachie Cowan a better footballer, allows Cincotta to come in and do what he's doing. And it is a confidence-building exercise. I mean, you've got to remember, like, when we look back at it in hindsight, Collingwood have thousands and thousands and thousands of years of football years of experience versus our team, and so does Geelong. And we come up against another team, Melbourne, who have been there and done that. And it's a lesson. They're not the finished article. And like I said on my fan cam, it's a lot fucking easier to learn when you win than it is learn when you're having to lick your wounds, isn't it? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that fourth quarter will be a happy learning experience because they won.
Yeah.
So it's not like they have to watch the tape and cry like they did against Collingwood, like I had to.
So an 8 for Newey as we move on to the midfield, and we start with young Ollie Hollands.
Plowman Hollands.
Ollie, yeah. There's a few elements to this conversation, but let's return to the team. He looked a lot more fresh, didn't he?
I've not seen a player bullied by his fans as much as this gentleman. And Jesus, he's pussing Lachie Plowman, I reckon, for hate. But, I mean, anyone in chat, I'll give you a special POM prize. What's different about that heat map to any other heat map we've seen from Ollie Hollands? I'll give you 5 seconds while I go through his stats. But what was very impressive from him, again, the third in his pressure acts. Inside 50s, we saw a more offensive Ollie Hollands this week. Score involvements, again, second behind the forwards. He was the number one midfielder for score involvements. Well done, Gav. And finally, Voss removed him from the Satan wing. the left wing. Now, the reason was he had to run with Ed Langdon. They knew he would be attacked. And we've seen this over the last couple of weeks, and it's been something that's been going through my head. You know, Kemp is being targeted, and you set a plan around Kemp being targeted, and it backfires 90% of the time. This week, Carlton switched it up, and it makes so much more sense that Blake Acres has the ability to work defensively and offensively, and he's more of the senior player. Give him the wing where he probably has to be a little bit more creative with what he does. And Ollie really did flourish. Now, we're going to talk about the 3 times he got pinged holding the ball. If you are one of these people that are complaining about him, please go back and watch the Collingwood game and see what the number one complaint from the pundits, from every YouTube analyst I've seen, was the fact Carlton didn't take the game on, particularly in the centre. And Ollie Hollands took the game on 3 times, got caught 3 times. Now, that's a learning experience for him. Twice he got caught by Ed Langdon. It happens. Ed Langdon is a master of his craft, and it shouldn't be forgotten that Ed Langdon is a very good winger. But I want him to do that. I want him to be... I remember there was a certain player that a lot of people used to froth, Paddy Dow. And one of the highlights of him was he took the game on and he got caught, and eventually he got coached out with him. And eventually he's a shell of the player he could have been. And Paddy Dow, no matter how many games he plays, he'll never, ever reach the heights of what he should do. Ollie, if we coach that out of him, we lose something. And it was incredible to see, because that first kick inside, sexy, he's got them skills. Please keep him on the right wing, because next week he'll go up against, probably, in my opinion, the best winger on the planet, and that's Errol Goulden. And if he wants to learn, he's gone up against someone who isn't very good defensively. He's gone up against someone, though, who's very, very, very accomplished at what he is. So I'm looking forward to seeing if Foss backs him. Give him that matchup. Give him that matchup against Errol and say, go toe-to-toe with the best.
There's a few parts to this. So I find it really interesting. I feel like in anyone's first year, you get the pass. He's a first-year player. He'll learn. Anything after your first year, that's it. You lose that pass. Now, on the other hand, maybe because people are, I guess, maybe it's a sign of respect. They're holding Ollie to such a high standard because he's already shown, I think, for a lot of us, that he's going to be a pretty good player for us. So maybe it's a sign of respect that he's held to such a high standard. I think there's just a balance. I don't think we need to go too far into the fact that he's inexperienced, which he is. He's 27 games into his career in his second season. It's an endearment, but the number one thing, you just touched on it there, that we can't afford Ollie to lose is his confidence in his kicking. And he's going to make mistakes. Like you said, Langdon's top 5 wingers in the league? Top 3? Top 5? It's right up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting if we could. I look at Ollie more as a journey, especially at this point. His first 3 to 5 years, it's more of a development journey rather than, this is the final product. So I like what he did. He made a few errors, but he also made a few really good plays. I don't think we look at the times he was pinged holding the ball and that takes away from what he was able to do overall.
Mate, Jesus, I mean, they all make mistakes. Jarvis, They all make mistakes. And that was easily his best game he's had for the football club by Flemington, to be fair. That he'll gain some confidence. That's one of them confidence gains for him that, for 3 quarters, he beat a top 5 player in his position in the league. And that means next week, he can go, tell you what, can I beat the best?
Yeah.
For a quarter? For 2 quarters?
He's still in that phase where he's going to get beaten. He's still there. You can tell he needs a couple of pre-seasons to fill out the body, learning off Acres, looking at the group around him, looking at the way he works. He's going to be fine. We are just...
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of them funny things because I read things and people say, I've watched the Camparellis.
Yeah.
He's in trouble. Well, as soon as they say that, I'm like, you've never watched the Camparellis for a full game. Yeah. Because if the Camparellis played in this league, they'd be lucky to get 6 touches.
Yeah.
And not be subbed out by quarter time. And then people say about Binns, and it's like totally different players. Like Binns at the moment is playing the predominant wing that Carlton go down. This is the first time we've seen him. And you've only got to listen to any AFL footballer who talks about VFL. It's a total different league. Like if they could have the space in the seniors as they do in the VFL, they'd all be Gary Ablett Jr. And that's the thing. It's tough out there. It's tough. It's really tough. And he's doing his best he can. And this week, I think you saw, switch the wing, piece of piss.
Yeah. Let's move on. So we go from a player in his 27th game to a player in his 192nd game. The captain, Patrick Cripps. Wasn't he ready for the task?
It's something that you love to see. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes with Patrick Cripps, and that's his ability to just bounce back and set the standard. And as you can see, a famous Patrick Cripps heat map, that dominating the centre is his, and then slowly oscillating to where the danger is, and that was their left flank, our right flank. And again, led the team in centre clearances, led the team in stoppage clearances. That's the green number. Tackles 5 and a staggering 34 pressure acts. And he didn't even have the most pressure acts in our team. And that's a lot. And again, this is what I tell you. Don't buy the hype that it's forward pressure that creates Carlton's turnovers. It's Carlton's midfield pressure that allows the forwards to create that turnover, because they play them very, very up high. And you always see it on the heat map. Durdin, Fantasia, Owies, sometimes they're in no man's land. That's the reason. These guys are meant to be creating them opportunities. And Cripps was the master of this. And him and Ollie Hollands' work in the first half was sensational as a team. Both of them working really hard on that pressure and making them boot it. And you look at where that red heat map is, look at his deepest towards Terry's head, the blue dot just in front of our goal square that we're defending. This is why the plan worked. These two are putting the pressure on to make you kick there, because the reason is, you know, that's going to fall where Mr. McGovern is. That was the plan. Get them to kick here. Get them to kick along here, and we'll take the game on. And Cripps, Hollands, they create them intercepts because of that pressure they put on. Phenomenal game by Cripps. Absolutely sensational.
I had nominated Jacob Wiedering for player of the game. I think come Brownlow night, Cripps gets the 3 votes in this game.
Yeah, we talked about this on the phone. Debbie, just to confirm, the green one is stoppage clearance. The algorithm has them as 2 different clearances, but it hasn't popped up on there. But the first one, centre clearances. Second one, stoppage clearance. So they're the clearances around the ground for the stoppages. But no, I agree with you, Terry. I think when you look back at that, particularly his 4th quarter, genuinely when we watch the Brownlow votes, the 4th quarter is a key voting mechanic as well. Key voting mechanic. If you kill it in the 4th, but you look at where he got the ball, that's all under the neck. And when you see Walsh's heat map, you'll see why. This was right under everyone's nose. And it was a classic Cripps game. Cripps game.
Petrarca definitely will be up. It'll be Petrarca and Cripps 2 and 3. I just think Petrarca came into the game in that 2nd quarter. Cripps was there pretty much the entire game. But maybe the goals swing it to Petrarca's favour. But anyway.
It will be interesting because there's been a few times in these Brownlows that we've seen players kick goals, but if they're slot at half forward, they get forgotten about. Jeremy Cameron's a great case in point, because every year the pundits say he's going to win it, and every year he doesn't come close. So could be an interesting one. You never know. I mean, Petrarca is probably the bookies' favourite, but I would not be shocked to see them go 1 S Walsh, 2 C Petrarca, 3 P Cripps. Would not be surprised. I wouldn't even be shocked, to be honest.
Well, you know what? By the time we get to round 9 in the Brownlow watch along, we will be up and about. So stay tuned, ladies and gents. That's coming up later in the year, but at least you know we're going to be kicking it on, because I think Cripps is playing the best footy of his career, on par, if not better.
He is, and It's no surprise as well. We said last week there was not enough. There wasn't any blues, if you remember, and a big part of it is when Cripps plays this defensive role. It's amazing how everyone seems to just suddenly be good. It's a weird metronome. It shouldn't be understated. The Cripps effect, we call it.
When the top buy in, the rest will follow. It's infectious. So let's move on. That's a 9 for Patrick Cripps, for those of you who are listening. Now we move to the other wing, the Blake Acres wing. Wherever he goes, it's his wing. Hasn't he lifted his game in the last month? Not that he was poor prior to the last month, but I feel like he's elevating again. Don't you?
I think this is a really interesting area, this, for him, because I really like this role for him. I like the switch of wings. I think it suits both parties. And you saw the wonderful thing about Melbourne is they stagger their wings, their attack.
Yep.
They're really clever at how they switch it up and stuff. And Caleb Windsor has been a massive outlet for them, and he's a real tricky customer. And I think on paper, it made sense. Ollie Hollands versus Caleb Windsor, baby versus baby. Do you know what I mean? If anything, Carlton have got the slight edge. It was interesting that I'd imagine if you told Melbourne at the start, we're going to go Windsor versus Acres, Langdon versus Hollands, they'd be like, 4 points, cheers. And what you saw here is Acres' defensive craft is just insane. It's actually vomit town, how good he is. And Carlton's sitting shallower. And again, this is where Ollie struggles. He's quite shallow. He hasn't got the chance to go forward. Wonderful thing about Blake Acres is he's played this game for so long, he could lead the way with the most meters gained from the possessions he had. He's been there. He's done it. He's read the T-shirt. And you can see here, his marks, his pressure acts are really strong, defensively solid, and he finds a way to get around the ground as well, Blake. And a lot of them touches, don't be deceived, that's not him switching positions. That's his elite running of being able to be involved in the play. And then when they turn it over, this one of them red dots, right wing, was a turnover. And by the time he got back to where that blue dot is on the left half-back flank, he actually is very good at getting back in discipline. So another great performance from Blake Acres. And I think Blake Acres, for me, is fast becoming the Nick Newman of the wings, isn't he?
I reckon he'd be sitting in the top 6 or 7 of the BNF right now.
I think and I think he'll be very high up when we see, I wouldn't be surprised to see him be quite high up in the clubman as well.
True.
I reckon this guy is very well respected by his peers because he works overtime. When someone makes a mistake, Blake invariably is there. And how often do you see him as the goalkeeper? I said this on the live. I reckon if you ever had that Gaelic football comeback, the Gaelic versus the AFL, I would not be surprised to see Blake Acres be the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Because how often do you see him goal square, last minute, bang? Like, this guy is... he takes it personally.
Do you know who he reminds me of? And I'm not saying he is the same as... It's just he reminds me. He has traits of... when I used to watch Jimmy Bartel, there was a period of time where Geelong had released Jimmy Bartel to sort of just decide where to go and when to make his run. Behind the ball, in front of the ball. Jimmy's a Brownlow medalist. I'm not suggesting that Acres is a Brownlow medalist, but the way Acres finds himself in the right position at the right time to save us behind the ball or to save us ahead of the ball, it's Jimmy Bartel-esque from how I remember watching Jimmy play.
I think that's a great shout. I think he's a man who I think suits the bill on that left side. You've got Nick Newman is behind him. I think you've got a very industrious and selfless left-hand side because Cottrell slots in front of that genuinely as well. So you've got a very selfless side and 3 guys there that have got an understanding of they'll sacrifice their own responsibility to do the thing for the team. And that's why you see Blake wander. He sees it and he's never one of them players who'll sit around and go, that's the halfback's job. That's the pocket's job. He will be like, nah, I can do it, and I'm going to do it for you. And you can see he's thankless job. Appreciated by us, though.
Yeah, always, mate. 7.5 for the man who needs a statue. Let's be honest.
He does.
Let's move on. Matty Cottrell. So we saw Ollie come in. We saw Cottrell play a bit more of a different role this week. How do we look at Cottrell's game?
Cotter's going for it, really. I mean, this was an interesting one for Cotter's. 15.1 kilometres gained. Back to a more deeper role. This was an interesting one, though, because we really saw him suffer the Ollie Hollands syndrome here. He couldn't get his hands on the ball, but worked tirelessly. And sometimes people forget that all you've got to do is be in the vicinity, and he dragged players. They tried to play it off the halfback quite a few times, and it was Blake who was taking them options away, and you don't get a stat for that. But quite invariably, go back and watch the play, particularly the fourth quarter. This guy was running with everyone. He was the short option and basically stopping it happen. So that's a selfless game from him. And it felt like if he had a goal here, we'd be talking about a really good game. But the wonderful thing about Cotters, and we talk about that left-hand side, the boys, they fight hard. They fight hard for each other. And one of them will perform. The others will be average, because that's how that left-hand side clientele work. But hard work, 15.1 Ks. I mean, the guy's a freak of nature.
Yeah. There was a passage of play. I've gotten my moments mixed up. It was our half forward line. He goes in with the ball, and he's almost intentionally, knowing he's going to get hit, like sort of bounced off the tackler or bounced off the opponent. Like he's backed his strength in to bounce off his opponent, knowing it's going to create separation before he gets the handball out. I think it might have been in the third quarter. Not sure, but I like watching him now use his strength as an added layer to his game in his body.
Oh, mate, I mean, his development, it makes you excited. You've got to think he came on the senior list very late, didn't he, compared to Ollie Hollands, and he's done his apprenticeship, and this is the player we've got now. And it kind of makes me excited to see where these young players will go. Now we've got a system where we don't have to expose them to being the superstar. They're a role player first. Think where these players could be, because Cottrell's like 10 times the player he was when he first came in, and he's always been industrious, but he's added craft and he's added knowledge. You can see the AFL IQ now. He belongs, doesn't he? You can see he looks around and he's not honoured to be there. He deserves to be there.
The chat of what we just had about Ollie Hollands. When Ollie Hollands adds the strength to his frame to then have the confidence to push through a tackle, like what Cottrell has right now, that's what I'm talking about. Cottrell didn't have this ability maybe up until 2023, let's say last season. That is where you look ahead for Ollie. You say, okay, when he starts adding that layer there, because now I'm watching Cottrell have more contested possessions and contested possession moments than ever before, and come out with confidence.
Facts. I think people forget. I mean, from a science point of view, you don't stop growing till you're 21. Yeah. I'd say from like a maturity point of view, you're probably not a real man until you're 25 anyway. So you've got to imagine Cottrell's hit puberty, completed puberty. He's now a full-grown, fully bearded man. And that helps. Do you know what I mean? When you have that acceptance of your body, you understand your body, you've had that nutrition for 3-4 years, the high-level training, makes it a little bit easier. Do you know what I mean? Like, Ollie's still... Do you know what I mean? You look at Ollie, he's still a wisp of a lad, and he's never going to be big. Look at Cottrell. He's not... I mean this with all due respect, but he's not exactly... You don't look at Cottrell and go, fucking hell, it's the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, he's not big, but he's stronger.
Yeah, he looks like your average personal trainer, doesn't he? Like, he looks in shape. But like you say, Terry, he's learned his body. He's learned his body. He understands his body, and that's an exciting thing. But I think the big thing that turns me on about him, Cottrell, is it's the IQ. He's really got that IQ now. You can see he isn't like a rabbit in the headlights now. He looks assured. He knows where to be. He owns his space. So that excites me.
Yeah. So a 5.5 for Cotters. Now we move on to Elijah. This was interesting because we had the full complement in the midfield. Cunners obviously came out of the team. So maybe there's a piece to talk about there, whether the two of them coexist. How did you look at Elijah's game?
We haven't seen a heat map like this since late season Samuel Doherty. And a lot of people, I've seen a few comments bagging this guy, going, oh, flashing a pan at early part. I would actually say, as the self-appointed chief of the Elijah Hollands fan club, I would say his best game. Unadulterated, in my opinion, his best game. 15.2 kilometers run, right? You want a point of difference playing on ball. Apart from Sam Walsh, I don't think any of our on-ballers have run 14.5 kilometers plus ever. Maybe in 2 games sometimes. Score launches from stoppage too. That's elite. That's fantastic. They're brilliant numbers. Score involvement's 4, and again the pressure acts probably like the penchant ending goal, right? Which you want. But I watched that and he gave them havoc. But when he went into the midfield, especially when they did their look at my big bollocks game where they played Viney, Oliver and Petrarca on, Carlton matched that this week without, and when Kennedy at the time, Hewitt did it as well, but Kennedy, Cripps and Elijah, they went and matched up on that quite a few times around stoppage, and it threw them because they were like, shit, we can't cope with him. And for the first time ever, I looked at their midfield and was like, let's look at the foot pace here, because this guy is quick thinking. He might not be the fastest on the field, but he's quick thinking. And his give and goes in them tight spaces, but also his ability to fade the kick and shape the ball off his foot is insane. And I really like this. I was like, you know what? I know Cerra's out now. Part of me was kind of excited because I was like, if you give him a full game in the midfield, he might rise to the challenge with Cerra out. He might really get excited for a full 2 hours in the mid.
He hasn't even come close to clicking with all the players on the field yet. That'll take seasons, maybe a full season, maybe 2. He looks comfortable with where he's at with his teammates. Don't get me wrong, but naturally, it takes time, 10, 15, maybe 20 games before you really start feeling each other's instincts. When that starts happening, in good shape. I like where he's at.
Mate, some of the give and goes he had with Walsh as well, they're creating a bit of synergy because I always say this, when you look at Carlton and you look at other midfields, the foot speed thing comes in. And honestly, the foot speed's a myth. It's a myth. You rarely, if ever, hear anyone mention it in the AFL with the coaching world since like 1998 because the pace of the ball can help it. But then you've got to think of this. A lot of them have 2 players that can run a long distance. We don't really have that. We have Sam Walsh. When you have Lidge with Walsh, these 2 can keep up with each other. And when we overran them in the first, just watch it a few times. Walsh and Hewitt Hollands are working together. They're running together. They're getting the ball back and then they're overlapping and they're keeping up with each other at pace. And that is something we've not had for a long time. In fact, I'd say we've never had it. So I'm actually thinking if Cerra, heaven forbid, is out for 2 weeks, it's Lidge. Lidge is going to get the gig and I can't wait. And I've covered the draft for a long time with you guys. He's still top 10 of all my draftees I've ever covered, like of all of them. So that's Dacos, that's Walsh, still in the top 10. Absolutely love this kid. And
also, so I've got a bit of a quiz. Oh, I think you'll be able to get this off the top of your head. So he's 22 years old. How many games has he played?
38. As if you've got that. As if you've got noise. How many?
Lower.
29.
Lower.
24. Lower than 24?
Yeah.
Oh, 15?
No, sorry. Oh, no, sorry. 21.
Fucking hell.
He's played 21
I know he was
games.
injured a lot, but fuck me.
He's played 21 games. So this is
Fuck me, Lidge.
early days, mate. This is early days.
Fuck me, Lidge. Sort your life out.
21 games, 22 years of age. Yeah. Coming along nicely.
We love you, Lidge.
We love the prophet, mate. He came from the heavens above. He gave the MCG and he showed us the way. He split this. Anyway.
You know what? I did think of you with the third. He gets the ball out the back of a stoppage from a handball when Viney and Oliver just like separated. It was like Moses.
Correct.
Like they just separate. And it was a little bit of cheeky fuck candy from the boy. And both of them hadn't got a Scooby, but real solid game. One thing that went against him this week, and this is a positive, is because he's shifted positions quite a bit because of the Cerra knock. So, and from the knock that happened in the middle of the game, he went onto the ball in the second half. So you'll see a player that came on and look at his numbers as well. They did incredibly well to replicate an incredible footballer. So great game from Lidge. My best game, my favourite game I've seen him play for the Blues.
Yeah. When he kicks the ball into the corridor, because he loves doing it, he's not afraid to do it. Everything opens up. That's the image of him I have at the moment. That's his first impression. So he gets a 6 for this game. As we move on, we're going to go into the forward line. Corey Durdin. How do we look at Dirds this week?
So it has to be said that a large part of his game was negating Lever. So Carlton really did do a really good job of their entries this week. It has to be said. Kind of helps when you've got Jack Martin, because Jack Martin naturally takes. If you watch this week, I don't think we'll come on to Jack Martin. But I don't think Jack Martin was particularly brilliant. But I think what it does is it naturally stops you playing oversized players on the big guys. You can't commit them all to them. You've got to always be wary of him. So Carlton tried something with Durdin, and they tried to put Durdin on Lever, which was a great idea because you actually saw Lever's inability below the deck. There was a few times the Blues forgot that Corey Durdin is 4'3" and wanted him to go into a marking contest with Lever, which did backfire. Now, this isn't a great game by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not going to say it. It's very meh, to be honest. But I did enjoy the fact, this is the one thing that I enjoyed, was he kept his line. He kept his line. And this is going to be a really interesting thing because I feel like Durdin has been really shifted every week. He hasn't quite got the normal thing. And you probably need someone a little bit taller and a little bit more ganglier. So Jesse Motlop is the natural. If he's going to play this role, Jesse Motlop is the natural. This is his bread and butter, half forward. It's where he slotted in back in his draft year. But he did what he had to do. I mean, if he had a couple of goals here, we'd be excited. But it was a real negating role, this role. It was an interesting one. And yeah, he's struggling. I think he's struggling at the moment.
Battling through. It hasn't all come together for him. That's the reality. He's busting his ass. It just hasn't come together. I guess a little bit more time. Jesse Motlop is a factor when he's available in a few weeks. Fogarty is a factor when he's available in a few weeks. Martin just came back into the side. So, we'll see what happens. It wasn't his total game. He scored a 4. That's what it was.
I mean, obviously, a defensive role, Fog, like Gav says, spot on. If we're playing that role full time, maybe that's a Fog.
Well, where his heat map is, we spoke about this with Fantasia a few weeks ago. That's a different heat map to what we've seen from him.
Yeah, he's been playing in the pocket. So obviously you can see, like I said, Carlton tried to be a bit more shallower, which gave them a bit more time, and it really worked. I just think that really negates what he does. So I watched this game, and I am 100% convinced Durdin or Owies, Fog. if Fogg would play that defensive role and you wouldn't even notice it. So I feel like Durdin, I'd like to see him get, because you know what? I love Owies, and we're going to talk about Owies soon. I froth him. His goals aren't exactly hard. And I mean that with all due respect. They're small forwards' goals being in the right place at the right time.
It's smart.
That's Owies' strength, though. Owie knows where to be. So I'd love to see Durdin when everyone is available. If he gets some VFL time, pure pocket. Give him that role, 2 weeks, and say, look, 8 goals in 3 games is your aim. 8 goals in 3 games. Be there.
Yeah. So a 4 for Durds. We'll move on. Harry. I saw 14.8 kilometers run. And I'm going to reiterate. It's Nick Riewoldt reincarnated, mate. A big boy at that height running like that.
Yeah, and Carlton really, I mean, I don't know if they watched Rating Show last week, but we did see a massive shift in Charlie Curnow and Harry's role this week. And usually that heat map is where them blue dots threaten to be. Halfway up there, exit bowl. This week he was the, well, for want of a better term, the entrance bowl. And the hard work this week was done by Mitch McGovern and Ollie Hollands. And then this guy was the next kick. And that's where we want him. That's where we want Harry. And you can see there leading the ground. Remember last week it was, I said if Durdin is Mark's on lead leader, might as well fucking wrap it up. And this guy was the tackle inside 50 leader. And I was like, you might as well wrap it up. That's a lot. And these leads here weren't leads inside 50. They were leads from deep. Yep. Almost like Tex Walker coming from 50 out and dragging a defender with him. And both Charlie and Harry excelled at this. When you're going at 14.8 Ks, it was really interesting. Petty played on him, right? Lever went on him. And not many key defenders are willing to go into deep water. It was like watching a crocodile at times drag his land-living prey into the river. And suddenly they felt water go in their lungs and shit themselves. They realised it was a bad time. And he is really strong. I think your Nick Riewoldt combination is amazing, mate. He is very Nick Riewoldt. He's not scared to sacrifice his goals for the team.
So, first goal of the second quarter for us. None of what Harry did will come up on a stat sheet, but there's no doubt in my mind it'll be replayed when they did their review, if it was today or tomorrow. So he makes Charlie gets the ball half forward. Harry sprints deep and hard into the pocket, opens up the space. Charlie hits up. Always goes back, takes the set shot, kicks the goal. None of that comes up on a stat sheet. But that's the kind of unrewarded running from, highly paid superstar player that, backs himself in, might have a bit of an ego. Of course, you have to have a bit of an ego when you're in that echelon. Those are premiership winning habits and plays. And I want to highlight that.
I think the biggest highlight as well, and I'm sure some of you in the chat will agree, if this was a return to the first 4 rounds. We asked for that last week on the ratings. And I think there was only about 4 inside 50s that we saw Harry and Charlie compete in the same pack. Yep. This week, we really saw them almost split 50 in half and go, if it comes here, it's me. If it comes there, it's you. And that is made easier when you've got Jack Martin or TDK sliding forward. It's interesting that this is the first week we've seen that TDK is used in the right way. It's not like all 3 of you go up. Partly helped by the fact Carlton were a bit deeper this week. The shallower midfield allowed them to move in parts. But this is Harry's game. And I agree with you, Terry. His ability, like Nick Riewoldt never really had a great forward with him. And I think if Nick Riewoldt had a Max King with him now, and I'm not saying Max King's a great forward, but I think if you put Nick Riewoldt there now in St Kilda, Max King would love it because it would drag a midfielder with him. You actually see it with Harry. Go back and watch Geelong. They use a big midfielder to stop him when he goes into the midfield. This week, it was too close to goal to do that. They had to use a defender. And invariably, that left Charlie with Petty or May, and it left the other one with Petty or May. Generally, May stayed with Charlie. But that helps Carlton as well, because it means, worst case, it's a double team, not a triple team. And both of them are accomplished and selfless from Harry. And I agree with you. There's no ego in Harry and Charlie. They just want to win the game.
Correct. It's crucial. A 6.5 for Haz. I'm looking forward to him at the SCG. I was there last year. That was one of the peak games last year where he really dropped his confidence. From memory, I think he might have kicked 0 goals 3 and a cup, maybe 1 or 2 out in the full. I'm looking forward to seeing him atone, play well.
And this is probably the most excited I've been about our forwards, because you don't want to see 2 elites from your key forwards. Now, you might go, Pom, that's crazy talk. Might sound crazy, but 6.5 is like the back pocket position. The second forward should be helping everyone else.
Yes.
Everyone else behind him shouldn't be looking for 7 goals from both of them. If you've got a good forward line, this should be a 10. But like Terry said, 3.5 points he's missing from a 10. There's no stat for. You don't get a stat for intelligent running, unfortunately. And that's the weakness of the algorithm. And that's the weakness of football and sport.
Absolutely. Aiden, I'm not going to Sydney, mate. I'm not buying that scarf. Learning my lesson. Let's move on. 6.5 for Haz. TDK. We're watching development, aren't we? Right before our very eyes. 2024 will go down as the year that we started to see the needle move more than ever for Tom. So good to watch.
Yeah, so Voss had to come up with a plan here, and if you look at the data, especially the fourth quarter, Mr. Max Gawn did what he wanted in the fourth quarter, but very clever from Voss to work out Max Gawn's weakness. And I'll say this, Vossi probably understands how to stop Max Gawn probably better than any other coach in the league, with less firepower than others, because there is ways to stop him in teams of success. You have to have a right ruckman. What Voss has worked out is give him a problem around the ground. Give him a problem around the ground. And this was great to see. You see these two red circles, one near halfback and one on the wing. Right? That is the old Harry McKay. And this week they said, right, tell you what, TDK, you can be him. You can be him. And suddenly everything felt good because we had an hour kick where Harry should be. And you can see that blue dot where Harry's just outside 50. That's where Harry's red was. See, that's where he rotated with him. Suddenly now you've got a kick from defense when you're in shit. Then you've got a kick out the wing when you're in shit. And then amazingly, if Harry's playing a bit deeper, and so is Charlie, Charlie comes in between them 2 red dots in the forward line, and Harry's already where that blue dot is. So suddenly, you've got a step ladder to goal.
Yeah.
As opposed to last week, where Durdin was one of them red dots. So, and hence he won marks on the lead. Suddenly, this is where he's now a chain in the cog. And he's now more than Pittonet's legs.
Yeah.
He's now got a defined role. And what have we been saying about him? Once he has a defined role, look out. Now Correct. He's got a defined role. I'm helping Pitt in the ruck, but I'm the exit kick down the wing. I'm the exit kick out of halfback. Plays to his strength, and then he gets rewarded. We slot him forward, and he kicks a cheeky snag.
Yep. This is the first time ever having covered Tom de Koning. I've definitely covered every single one of his games. Yep. It's the first time I've felt him start to really be a presence in the forward line. Like actually be a presence in the forward line. I haven't really seen it consistently ever in his career. It's been there in flashes. I think the semi-final last year was a really big moment for him. We really needed it. He stepped up. There have been a couple of games now against the quality opponents. Sometimes you can counteract the argument with, but it was against North or it was against West Coast. No, it's against quality opponents where he's taken moments in the forward line and starting to see that element to his game, added. So let's break it down again. 24 years of age, 69 games. Mate, the best is still to come.
Mate, And you know what? He is learning every week. We're adding layers, and it's also a learning curve for Voss. And I think I said this in my review. I had a fever. Like, once I'd calmed down, I did my review after I'd spat my dummy, and I said there was a lot of 2023 in Carlton when I look back at it. And what I meant by that is not the results and were shit. What I meant is, if you actually look at 2023 in isolation, there was the first 8 rounds where the Blues were working on something that was the next stage in level 2. And when we tried to get to level 2, there was too much level 1 and a little bit of level 3, but not enough level 2. This week, it feels like everything we've seen in the last 4 rounds kind of were almost there. And then this week, they got released. The shackles were off. The Blues were sick of losing. And you're going to see a heat map next, and suddenly you think, fuck me. I've just seen TDK's heat map. I've seen Harry's. And then you see the total red out, I call it. So we'll get TDK's rating. Just remember that. Just think, total red out.
Yeah. So we're going to compare his heat map to another heat map shortly. Do you want to do it? So he gets a 7. Do you want to do it now?
Okay, just show the next heat map. Should be CC.
52. Rux?
No, 29.
29. Boom.
See, look. So, right. If we play a little POM game, right? The map, if you go, I'd say, I'll have to reload it up for you. But look, if you look at all these heat maps, just play a little game with me. Look, so just think red dot, red dot, red dot, red dot. So, look, red dot there. Yeah, there's one. So just superimpose it in your mind, right? So this area where that blue dot is now is red because of him just out of half forward. Then look, and we'll just skip ahead a little bit. There's only one bit that hasn't been covered red. Total red out, baby.
Wow.
And we see that quite often in top teams. So a team that we see that quite a bit from last year was Collingwood. They're 4 big toes, right? They're 4 big toes around the ground. Cameron, Cox, Darcy Moore pretty much covered 90% of the ground in their aerial dominance. This week, we've started to see it. And Charlie, right now, honestly, I said it in my fan cam, and then some people a little bit of cry saying that I was picking on anyone. I wasn't picking on anyone in particular. Everyone's picked on my Charlie Cerra, and Charlie's like my favorite kid, right? So I get defensive of him. But everyone said Charlie can't fucking defend. What the fuck is that red thing behind halfway? What is it? Someone tell me what it is. Is that a defensive area? It might fucking be, eh? And look, this guy here, Charlie, works hard up the ground. And got to be said, Stephen May had a little bit of an issue here because Stephen May and him, probably May won the first quarter. Probably the second quarter, probably did it. Once Charlie started to go, you know what, come follow me, Steve.
Yes.
Steve struggled.
Come into the abyss. Come to the rabbit.
And again, the crocodile. Once Harry and Charlie realise in 50 we can beat people, our biggest strength is when we take them to deep waters where they struggle, where they don't want to come. They don't want to come. And Stephen May, Jake Lever do not want to be out of their defensive 50.
No.
They started doing it. And then what happened? Charlie went down the back, started intercept marking, and look at it. Leading marker on the ground, leading score involvement, and he only kicked 2. So he was starting to dish it out.
Yep.
And again, look at these little areas. He was the next kick. That red thing, the next kick. Harry and Charlie, red zones in the same area. The next kick. And they took it in turns this week, where usually it's Harry. They leave it to Harry. This week, this is the skill. And now when you do this against a team who have got great defensive structure, like Sydney, that's how you beat them. This needs to be done next week because Sydney's defensive structure is remarkable and they don't fall for bollocks very often. They'll fall for this bollocks because they have to.
Yes. how much do you highlight Charlie's game, particularly the move down back? It happened a few times throughout the game. We spoke last week around coaching and did the coaches help the players as much as what they could have. There were two things I thought of with Charlie's game. One, does Charlie have the license to decide when to go back, or is that an instruction from the coaching box? And then two, it's good to see early on kicking the ball aerially. Stephen May's just too good aerially against Charlie. Then if you looked at Charlie's goal that was set up by Jack Martin, he kicked it in front of him and allowed the ball to bounce. It's really good to see the players up the field be smart with how they kicked it to Charlie. Still room for improvement. There were still a couple that were just not good enough, but started to see some more higher IQ entries to Charlie.
Yeah, mate. I mean, there were better. I mean, this week I had a good conversation with a good mate of mine who works for another football club, and he was talking about their key forwards and talking about how the worst thing that happens is when it's not kicked to their advantage. And he said to me, not everyone's key forwards are like your melts who can take contested grabs on 8 players. The average mortal only takes it 1-on-1, maybe 1-on-2, but you're hoping for a good kick. It was really good this week that they started to kick as if they were Levi Casbolt or if there was someone else. Give them something to lead into, and it became infectious. These entries were a lot more shallower, but direct. And it allowed them. And as you say, Charlie's ability, I think he relished this matchup because I think Stephen May is his equal in every sense of the way. Every sense of the way. I think Stephen doesn't care if it's high, if it's low. He's quick. And Charlie worked him out, and it was a really, really good effort. And it was made easier by Harry fucking off a bit as well. Yeah. I think people forget, these are very regimented structures. Cincotta talks about the structures and how regimented they are. The instructions need to be done to a T for it to work. This week, with them all having 3 separate roles, allowed them to influence other parts of the game. So, great game from Charlie, and all that was lacking was an 8-goal score. But again, this is what we want. We want our key forwards not to be a 10 and a 5. We want them to be 7s together and a spread.
Dare I say it, a mature game from Charlie. He got a 7.5 as we move along to Pitto.
And there you are, look. So he was the final phase of Voss's red out plan. And look at this. That's the biggest red.
It's unbelievable. Those who watch this show understand how long we've been showing the heat maps, and you understand how this little used to be like a dot in the center circle. And where it's gone last month.
And if you remember the heat maps as well, like particularly TDK's, that red in the left, red in the half forward. Look, slight yellow because he's been trusted to get there. This is the equivalent, honestly, this heat map is the equivalent of Harry McKay when it says kilometers ran, saying 100 kilometers, right? That's never going to happen, right? We're never going to have Harry McKay ran 100 kilometers. This is the equivalent of that happening. Pittonet has literally gone all around the ground here. And this is clever. And I can't understate this. People talk about clearances and go, clearances are a pointless stat. And I always say this to you guys, yes, they are, because it doesn't tell you anything. A good stat to look at if you're wanting to see clearances with substance is score launches. And this is something that Dean Cox used to go crazy at, Brody Kemp, Max Gawn, their ability to create scores from stoppage situations. And again, leading the way with it. These are intuitive clearances to advantage. Now, he got struggled against Gawn, as you always do. Gawn's a freak. But look at this. Tackles. He backed it up. He stopped Gawn doing that little soppy handball that Gawn does. He tackled him 3 times. And then he kicked the miraculous snag. Really interesting. The rumors are they're going to miss him out there because he's got his little finger surgery.
Yep.
It's going to be a shame, but I'll tell you what, he's really cemented his place in this, and it's going to be interesting. But I'll tell you what, TDK, he could probably do both. I reckon he could probably do both.
Yeah, and like we said, it's not a 2-ruck game every week. this week. If Pitto doesn't play on Friday night, it'll be out of necessity. But I want to just bring us back to he's played 5 games this season. So comes in against Adelaide, first game for the year, interrupted preseason and managed and the like. 8 possessions. We're screaming about he doesn't do anything around the ground. Has a monster game against the Giants. Absolutely dominant. 17 possessions. Then there was, we're flash in the pan. Backs it up against Geelong with 19. Backs it up with Collingwood, 15. And backs it up against the D's with 14. Now, he's not a possession guy. I'm not looking at him to be a possession guy, but I think for him to go now and put together a month, 4 solid weeks of career best form, so important for him and so important for us. Keep in mind, Tom, have a guess. How many games has he played?
What, for Cowan?
In his career. He's 27, right? He's a big boy. He's 27. How many games has he played?
I think it was less than 10 against Hawks for Hawks.
It was less than 10.
Yeah, for Hawks. He hardly played for them.
Yes, it was less than 10. It was
20, 30,
it was
40, 50.
7.
Let's say 60.
You're wrong, but you're very close. 64 games. He's just played his 64th game. That's a really good guess by you, the way you broke that down, by the way. 64 games. Why doesn't he get looked at as someone that can improve? He's 27, played 64 games, and he's a ruck. Why was he not awarded the benefit of having scope to improve to be a worthwhile investment?
Mate, I mean, I think this is going back to why we're happy with this game. Once you work out his limitations and you give someone to help him around his limitations, I think now you're seeing the fruits of his labour. He isn't going to be a Max Gawn and run around the ground. But that's what TDK is there for. And now TDK's got a role that warrants him being in the team, not just as his legs, which allows him to flourish. And I'm with you, bro. I think he could be someone that could be the ace up our sleeve here, especially when he slides back. And we don't have that score launch, and we don't have someone direct at times. And I think it's an evolution process. I look at this side from last year to now, and some of the improvement of players is scary. Do you know what I mean? Like no disrespect to Cunningham, but Elijah's another level of skill to Cunningham. And this time last year, everyone was touching themselves silly to the potential of Cunningham. So now Cunningham is the accessory. Look at TDK's development from this time last year to now.
Yeah.
This time last year to now, TDK's another ballpark. This guy is running. I mean, I've just found this. Look at this, Terry, to back your point up. Look at this. That is the heat map of Marc Pittonet's best game of 2023.
Wow.
Like, he's just coloured the centre circle in, right? And then, like, I think 2 of them, that halfback one happens to be where they're running and out of the ground. So I think that's what the GPS data's done. But then you look at the heat map we've got now. Look, like, this is like a ruckman.
Well, you know what? He has a lot of traits that I really enjoy. A couple of them are his mentality. He brings together this. You know how we've talked about we need like a bit of like a runt, like a little prick. We don't need a little prick when you've got a big prick. He's a prick on the field. He's the nicest guy off the field. He is a fucking asshole. He's not afraid of Max Gawn. He pushes Max Gawn around. There's that. And then the other part, which is, I think, one of the most important traits for any individual in a team sport, he doesn't step out of his limitations. He knows exactly what he needs.
I think Stewson makes a great point as well. Absolute fantastic fucking point. That everyone gets so obsessed with Max Gawn's the benchmark. Yeah. Max Gawn's the benchmark. Oh, gone. Fuck Gawn. Nan Curvis won a flag, right? Do you know what I mean? Todd Goldstein has played for very good teams and been dominant. Aaron Sandilands, like, honestly, when he used to run those fucking earthquakes at the other end of the world, guy was slower than a Renault Espace. So there has been success from players that aren't Max Gawn. Max Gawn is the freak, right? The freak, the benchmark of what rucks could be. But in reality, rucks are Pittonet. And you know what? Pittonet, when you add a bit of Elijah Hollands playing a bit creative off the midfield, you add a TDK who's big, gangly, and quick. Suddenly, you froth it. You froth it. And I really like that Voss has had to adapt a plan that isn't TDK be his legs. Now it's Pittonet can do a bit of defensive craft, can do a little bit of offense.
Yeah.
TDK can be the accompaniment now. He's got his own gig. And I think suddenly, like we said, we're going to call it the total red out. That is the plan. Kerno and McKay working up from central, Pittonet slotting in the hole, TDK being the outlet ball. Suddenly, you've got 4 players with defined roles that can win you a football match if they do their roles. And I think it's tough. I think it's really tough if you do that. Really tough for anyone to stop it.
What happens in 40 more games of Marc Pittonet? You know?
You know what? I think he's got a little bit of a... How do I say this without being nasty? Do you remember when Sam Rowe left? And you kind of realised when Sam Rowe left, even though Sam Rowe wasn't like a world beater, there was no one to really replace Sam Rowe. And do you remember? I remember as soon as we got rid of him and he was at St Kilda, everyone was like, oh, fuck, look at Sam Rowe would have been useful. He can play forward, back, midfield. He can play in the ruck sometimes. I think he's got that about him. I think when he goes and when he's not in there, you'll remember it. You'll remember it.
What you've just described is a cult hero type figure.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lovable guy, and there's something about him, man. Like I was listening to that interview with Paolo. I didn't celebrate because I thought he'd been touched. Like, and I kind of was like, mate, you've kicked like 4 goals in your career. Fucking savor the moment, bruh.
Yeah.
Savor the moment. Like, well, what about you were worried? And then he was so cute when he was like, oh, I promised someone a celebration and I forgot it. Like, you were like, fuck me, mate. I'd be fuming if you promised me a celebration because the rarer than rocking or shit you kicking a goal. Yeah. Like, the poor person he promised might have to wait 10 years for a goal now.
Yep. So that's Pitto. He scores a 7.5. Let's move on.
Marc Pitto.
Wow. Samuel Walsh. What is that?
So you'll see with the midfields now, if you've been really paying attention, that if you imagine the centre square and imagine it went from left wing to right wing, that's where the red flood is. That's where the midfield have sat. They've been letting teams now come out of halfback with a bit of pressure from their half forwards, but then the pressure's really amps up. And them kicks, particularly where if you drew a line goal side of the red, just in front of the 50, they're the kicks that have killed Carlton against Geelong, against Adelaide. Once they get out of that line, that's where they can kick in and around Carlton. This is where the midfield were there. That's where the second line of defence was. And Walsh, spectacular, leading the team in tackles, leading the team in pressure acts. The reason Carlton are really putting a lot of onus on Ollie Hollands and Sam Walsh and players like Cottrell, because of how far they can run. They can do this all game. There's no let up. And Walsh was a nightmare for them. Nightmare for them. And clicked a cheeky snag, some good distribution. And the big question mark at the moment, I've seen a few people say to me, oh, but Pom. He's going at 60% kicking efficiency. You've seen the kicks he's taking? You've seen where they are? Like, there was a lot of times that he nearly got caught like Ollie Hollands did. He's kicking under fucking shit. No one kicks well in that. But look at these repeat efforts. This guy is world class. And I want to end the debate now. You can't compare Nick Dacos and Sam Walsh. You can't compare These two are premium fucking talents. Like, both of them have got their weaknesses. Both of them have got their strengths. Just enjoy them both because these are superstars in every sense of the word.
38 pressure acts.
And he got the ball about.
Hey! That's insane. That is...
Mate, you are asking a Rolls Royce at the moment to pull a trailer, and our Rolls Royce here doesn't give a fuck. Like, our Rolls Royce is happy to pull the trailer. It's not bothered. And that's a huge, huge, huge thing. Do you know what I mean? People forget that. Like, when they compare players, they usually expect like Walsh is going to be, I reckon Walsh in about 10 years, people are going to start criticizing midfielders because Walsh will be offensive, but he's also defensive. And the only player this week to have more pressure acts than Sam Walsh is Matt Rowell and Viney. They're the only players, right? Cripps was the fourth most with 34. Carlton, honestly, like that's insane, bro. That Viney is the master of pressure acts, but Viney hasn't got his touch of skill, touch of class. Like, and Matt Rowell slightly ahead of him, playing a total different role. You're looking at a very special human being, very special human being.
No, he is. He certainly is. Such a better team with him in it, man. Goodness me.
Like Gab said as well, just remember as well, it needs to be put in perspective. He couldn't walk 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. He gets a 9. We've gone through 34 players. Guys, take a 30-second break and have a listen to Nick from Horizon Finance Group.
I'm Nick Horsburgh. I'm the director of Horizon Finance Group. I've been in the automotive industry about 20 years now and brokering for the last 7 years. I started Horizon Finance Group about 3 years ago. I've got a passion for really helping people. So if they've got a bad credit rating and have been previously knocked back, what I really enjoy about the role is being able to give them guidance, put them in a position where they've got better financial practices and get them their target of getting a loan for them. That's really rewarding for me.
That's our man.
The hot dog.
I mean, we're showing one of the highest ratings in the team, but Nick will find you the lowest rate out there. So a 9 for Sam Walsh. So that's tied with Cripps. Cripps got a 9 as well. All right. Let's move along. Matty Kennedy got his starting gig back. Did Kennedy after losing it? He was a sub the week before. How do we assess Matty Kennedy's game?
Michael Voss, never drop this gentleman again.
Yeah,
please. His hard work down the left-hand side was exceptional. When he was the coverage for any midfielder that slot forward, and he also played the Adam Cerra role when we lost with him not being there. So, I mean, look at it. Pressure acts strong. Look at the tackle numbers again backing up. Also, the score involvements and the ground ball gets as well. The ground ball gets was willing to get his head above the ball. And this was a real strong performance. Him, Bam Bam and Cripps are really forming a little partnership in the midfield. They've got a really good understanding. And it's interesting that George Hewitt had the break. I think he needed the break. I don't think from form. I just think George Hewitt's got strenuous back issues. He's had it for a long time. And I think the way that we're playing, that's something that I want to look for. Has got a negative from him, though. And this is a big negative. He was so fucking good at his job that we wouldn't have seen Petrarca if he wasn't so good at his job. That was his matchup in the first quarter. And I was like, take that, you TikTok dickhead. Take that. But then they moved him forward. So unfortunately, I've got to penalise him for making Petrarca go forward.
It's a good point.
Don't be too good at your job. Just be good enough to keep him invested.
Gets a 7. Yeah, really liked his game. Apart from being too good at it.
Yeah, don't make him go forward. That should be the rule. Be good, but don't fucking let him go forward.
Not too good. Jordan Boyd. I'm excited to talk about this because we'll talk about him and Cincotta together in the side in a moment. But Jordan Boyd's game, how'd you look at it?
Really interesting, this one. Because I watched this game and I was like, the way Cincotta's playing, it's probably, I wouldn't say made his job vulnerable, but suddenly Cincotta's now in the conversation and Jordan Boyd definitely is in that 6. It's interesting now that they've really gone ahead of probably Lachie Cowan. He's probably that next thing. And I'm really enjoying the strings that we see of Jordan Boyd's game. And I wanted to showcase this week, proving that he can be defensive as well as offensive as well. And that's something that the layers were starting to see from Jordan Boyd. I thought the picture as well of Mother's Day with his mum, cute, it's just FYI. Like that's really cute. But again, look, strong defensive half pressure acts, does the dangerous stuff. I always think when you get labeled classy, it makes you lose your ability on defense. And I want to appreciate the defense. This guy can defend. And I love the fact that when the midfield gets up and about and puts that pressure on, they hide him out the back of that defensive layer, because when he gets the ball, he goes straight back into the mixer. And Jordan Boyd is a very special footballer. And honestly, it needs to be said, no one talks about this. Some of the players we picked up in the mid-season draft have been, well, I mean, some of them are packing my bags at Coles, aren't they? Let's be honest. Jordan Boyd's kicking ass.
Yeah, it's a tick. No. Look, it's a tick for the mid-season draft. It's a tick for the identification of him, the development of him, and, to Jordan himself.
My favourite thing as well is when he takes the mark and he does this. Now he starts sorting his hair out a little bit. Yeah. He reminds me of you backstage. But I've noticed now, whenever he gets that mark on the wing, he sorts his hair out. It's almost like he knows. Just got to make sure it looks good.
Sometimes you can have your cake and eat it too. He went to that music festival as a junior, and he's now playing for the Carlton Football Club.
Mate, I've got to say, it's my favourite thing, though. Just when he shuffles his hair, he makes sure it looks good, and then he delivers an absolute jet-like kick in. I'm like, yeah, I rate that.
I love him in the team. I love Cincotta in the team. Naturally, my mind thinks about Zach Williams coming back into the team. He trained today I was out training today. He looked to be moving relatively freely. To be fair, it wasn't a majorly intensive session. What do we do when Williams is ready to come back in? I'm not even going to touch Sard yet, because Sard is still maybe a couple of weeks away, and I don't want to get caught into that just yet. But for Sydney, is it fair to assume that Williams would come back in? And if so, how can now that we've got Cincotta playing a lockdown role, we've got Boyd playing his role, does this give us the opportunity to play Zach Williams in a way that maximizes his strengths?
It's a tough one, because, I mean, if we were talking about Zach Williams having form, let's say he was Sard when Sard got injured and there were some really nice moments and you were like, okay, I would be willing to have the conversation with you of, does he play Cerra's role for 2 weeks? Let's say Cerra's out for 2 weeks minimum with a hammy. Does he play that? Go back in the midfield. I would straight away say, don't change the back line. But for me, the back line is untouchable. And the only change I would see in the next 2 weeks is Sard in, Cowan out.
Right.
Cowan's playing a defensive role. So if you bring Williams in there, we saw what happened last week when Williams plays a defensive role. You might as well ask France to be your allies during a war. You know they're going to fucking surrender in 2 years, right? So it needs to be an offensive role for Williams. Now, do you let Boyd go defensive? Do you really take the kicking off him? Or do you get brave and go, right, Newman, you're going to have to be defensive and we put Williams there? But then I'd say, has Williams earned the right to be half-back flank over Newman, who's got 5 years of shoveling shit?
True.
So I would say, honestly, as harsh as it sounds, set the standard. Williams play VFL. Williams play VFL. And Cowan, he was down this week. It's probably an easier job next week for Cowan, because I think they've got left depth in the forward line, less mix and match than Melbourne. Melbourne have got awkward mid-sized players. Sydney haven't.
Are we getting too caught in the recency bias? Like, okay, he got caught a few times against Koning with Jamie Elliott, but against the Giants, he shut down completely shut down Toby Green before he went off injured at the half. Is it fair to paint the brush on Zach that he doesn't defend? And as
I don't
opposed
think
to
he's. I don't think he's horrendous, but I don't think he's horrendous. But I think Boyd's role this week was stopgap. Was take the extra, but you want Williams with the ball in his hands.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You want him like, but would I? I don't think I could go to Newman and say, "Yeah, cheers, mate. You've been shoveling shit for the rest of these clowns for 6 years. You've finally got your opportunity to be offensive. Piss off back to defense. We're putting Williams in." When I think Newman has proved week on week he'll do that, and he's earned the time. So if Saad was fit, another conversation. Yeah, Newman has to bow. But I just think Zach Williams, I want him in the midfield. Like, I'd say Cerra's role, if he's out. I don't think we've got a Cerra. But I don't think his form has been good enough. And I still think, I go back to the GWS game, Terry. I said it at the time, I thought he won the battle, but I still didn't think he looked 100% fit.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
And even before he went off, and the week before, it still felt like he missed a yard. So if Zach Williams is 110% fit, I'm expecting him breaking lines and taking the game on. I don't think he's got that in him.
That's what's needed in Sydney, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if you could guarantee me it's the Zach Williams that we know and love, 100% is in. But I've got to base this not on, I hope, and what I've seen. And I don't think Z-Will is at full faculty, and I'd be surprised he would be after a week off.
Okay, fair. Is there a matchup next week against the Swans where, I mean, you're in the back half, you have to defend first. That's the team rule. That's the ethos. So I'm not trying to absolve Zach of any defensive responsibility. On a matchup like Jamie Elliott, probably isn't the one. I'm trying to think.
I don't think you can blame him for. I mean, Jamie Elliott makes the greatest look stupid. Like that's his gift. But I mean, who are they slotting forward? I mean, you're going to see what? Row bottom up there. Matty Roberts swings through there. Papley, obviously. James Durdin rotates up there with Harold Goldenoff half forward. Will Hayward, who's becoming a Carlton player. And then you've got Smarty, Marty, and McDonald, who the Tolls are going to have. I mean, to be honest, I don't look at their forward pressure and think, I know everyone's going line breaker. This is the new Sydney, not the old Sydney. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? They're going to kill you on the back half, not on the front half pressure. So I just think we've got. I don't want to. I think this backline looks so good. I wouldn't want to touch it unless it's hard.
I felt the same on Thursday because you're not dropping Cincotta. No fucking way.
He can't against Patley. I mean, at the moment, I don't care what anyone says. I know he's my boy, but no one's got the winning record at the back against small forwards other than Cincotta. Cincotta, for me, is if I was doing the team meeting on Monday, I'd be, before I put the question out, I'd be saying, do you want Papley this week? Because I reckon he's keen. I reckon he'd want Papley, he'd demand Papley. Yeah. So I think it'd be interesting. So, yeah. Saad, yes, 100% in. Williams, yeah, I think now's the time to have a pot at the Cerra role, because we're going to come on to Cerra in a minute. I think Cerra's game is the most understated game.
Wow.
This week.
Field. Interesting. Yeah, we'll touch on him. We'll get to Cerra. We can explore. Can you please click 38? It'll be on your side. So we've talked about Jordan Boyd.
I love a bit of Jords, but Jordan Boyd, good game from him. And here is Jordan Boyd's final statistics.
There you go. That is a 6.5. Let's talk about Adam Cerra. Let's talk about Chesney. Such a shame. Such a shame that he looked to be getting back to his best. Came back last week after missing a few weeks with the hammy, and then Do we have an official diagnosis yet? We haven't got an official. I mean, we know it's a hammy of sorts, but did something come out today? Maybe I missed it about Cerra.
No, he's got it. All Voss said it was up to scans, wasn't it? It was. He's going to be sent off for scans. It was an interesting thing because I thought Cerra's game for me, if you remember, Walsh's heat map was the inverse of this. So when I said that there's that red wall, massive part of it, and his running, Walsh and his running are so intelligent, are so intelligent, and he takes players away from contests as well. So like what we're praising Kerno and Harry for, his ability to change that is so clever because some of his leads are so intelligent. I love this game, and this is why I said maybe Z-Will's an option here if you wanted to play something different, because he really is the auxiliary midfielder. He doesn't get a lot of the ball, but he works hard. And look again, ground ball gets the hard stuff. People, when we signed him, everyone was frothing. Oh, he's classy. Is he bollocks? He's hard working. He's willing to do the dirty stuff. His tackling and defense is so underrated. And again, look, intercept possessions. Back to what I said, the midfield ability to take the game on and steal the ball is underrated. Incredible footballer. And it's a shame we haven't seen him and Walsh enough together because it just turns me on.
Yeah. 24 years old, Adam Cerra, 122 games.
I really hope he comes back, man. I hope he's in this week, but I think there is an argument here that if you want to get creative, is it Z-Will?
Let's break it down. What are the options for for missing Cerra? So one of them would be Carroll back in,
which I don't think you can do. I think if we're honest,
okay.
Like I watched him. I thought his VFL game was beautiful this week.
Yeah,
but I didn't. Like, if we're serious about him getting better, he needs to play VFL, in my opinion. Right? Okay. He can't just keep coming in when we've got Hewitt as a worst case. I watched Kennedy play this role. Didn't mind Kennedy play this role. He's not as fast and as classy as him, but the ground ball gets and the intercept possessions were there, as we saw in the stats. He's still very clever. So you can play that. It can't be Hewitt because Hewitt took Kennedy's role when he came on, and that was quite a thing. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to go like for like, Z-Will probably is your closest. But
Billy Wilson? Or is it a bit...
He's played halfback the entire VFL, so, I mean, good luck. Good luck getting in the team, Bill. For me, I think logically it's Kennedy because Bin's like too undersized and Akers won't go on the ball. Ollie Hollands won't go on the ball. So, yeah, it's probably Kennedy. He's probably number one.
Jackson Binns?
Come on, Terry. Behave.
I'm just asking the question.
I don't think anyone in the world has seen Binns play as much as me unless they're a professional AFL recruitment scout. On the ball would be a disaster. It would be a disaster. Like, you would destroy his career.
Yeah.
Because you only have to see him take contact in VFL. And with all the respect in the world of VFL players, 90% of the VFL players you're coming up against ain't anywhere near AFL standards.
What about...
So you need another, because obviously Elijah's got 90% of it down pat, right? So Elijah played a lot of it. So he's going to be one of them. This role's split between two, though. You need the point of difference. So is it Kennedy? I reckon I think Voss will go Kennedy.
I was going to say, my next question was Elijah with Cunners coming into the side.
Could be.
Maybe between the two of them.
He played on the ball. I mean, I would say this week when I watched Cunningham, all due respect to Cunners, it was a decent game. But I watched him play 90% on the ball, and I want to see more. Like, Like people, what annoys me is people watched Dow last year and everyone was like, Dow's got to play, Dow's got to play, Dow's got to play. But Connors was nowhere near Dow's level this week, and Dow's nowhere near St Kilda level. Right? Let that sink in. St Kilda level. So Connors needs to be half forward pinch hitting. So I think it's Bam Bam, which then, is it too slow? Which people say, because it is very one-footed then. But remember, it's defence. We are looking to slingshot. So it's going to be an interesting one. It's a great question, Terry. I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, I'd imagine if you go Kennedy, Elijah's getting a lot of time.
Yes.
It's the point of difference. But then I'm like, he needs help.
Yeah.
But great game. Look, I mean, this guy hardly played any football.
So 6.5.
I love him. Underrated is Chesney. Tell you.
He sure is. Let's move on. We're going to talk about Jack Martin. Couple of moments in this game. Felt his presence back. Feel like if you had this game 3 years ago, it's funny to watch the development of the team and how many more layers there are to the team. Because if he has this game a couple of years ago, I think we're all up in arms. But, I mean, low possession. He's a low possession guy. First game back will absolutely be better for the run. Need to now just get a month, behind him, get some continuity, but sorely missed.
Yeah, and people don't give this guy, in my opinion, enough credit. Because this is a classic hybrid forwards game. So it seems to be like a thing with us that everyone expects everyone to get 30 touches, but in reality, these players get less than 10 touches, and you're looking for moments. You're looking for moments, and he took his moment, didn't he? He had his moment, 5 minutes into the game? And boy, oh boy, did he take it. He got it. He gave it one of the... But what's important is his work rate and what he does behind him. So I can't remember where I watched it. I watched it ages ago, and it was about... it was Jack Gunston. It was Jack Gunston. He was talking about that the most important role you can do for any young, not key position player is just lead and make space behind you. Make space and look dangerous. And this guy looks dangerous. You watch him, and Sandy nails it. The defenders respect him. They creep out. You could see when he ran between the zones, you could see levers like, oh, do I go? And that moment of indecision, chaos behind you. And 100%. I thought that him and Durdin, even though Durdin didn't score well, their work they did on Lever was brilliant, because Lever was nowhere near the contest at any time. And it was because these two were being dickheads to him. And fair play. You've got to do that. And you're going to have to do that next week as well.
Yeah. It was interesting also. He was listed as 1 to 2 weeks away. Week of team selection. That'll never get spoken about, because we only talk about such things when things go wrong and we want to sack Russell. But it was 1 to 2 weeks away, the week of selection. And he came back in. I'm wrapped.
Mate, can we sack Russell for lying about his selection availability?
We have to. We have to do it now as well, mid-season.
Right now! But nah, I'm with you, bro. I mean, like, he's done... It's great to have him back. Definitely very much needed in our forward 15. It's going to be interesting because, I mean, obviously there's Haywood being talked about, and he's... I mean, now you're going to see everything about this gentleman, I think, because he's in the shop window, isn't he? But this is a proper mid-sized players game. It's going to be really interesting, because when people talk as well, I mean, when people are talking about Haywood as Martin, I'm like, okay, you've never watched Sydney play, or you've maybe watched them play Carlton. He isn't a third tall, and I've had a few Sydney people message me and go, Carlton fans lost it. If you play him third tall, Jesus, you're going to be rubbish. He plays that 4/5, and he plays in the pocket and leads from there. So total different type of player, very much needed player, because we don't have him. But I think there is an area where you play both, because you look at Hayward's numbers, very strong on the deck, very dangerous on the deck as well. Real great option around forward stoppage as well. So he's a really interesting one, Martin, because the issue is it's the injuries, isn't it?
It's the availability.
Because if he played 20 games a year, I'd be saying 6-year deal, $1 million.
Yep.
But because these are his worst games. Like, this is his worst game, but it's exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Sad.
So we get to 6. The conversation will evolve as the year plays out, no doubt. Now we're going to talk about Matty Owies. Yes. Given it the big one, let me give you a little spoiler alert. I've enjoyed his 2 weeks so much that he is going to be on the cover of the thumbnail this week.
Yes. So last week, everyone had a bit of a suck, didn't they? Because he only scored a 6.5. And I tried to explain to you that forwards, it's really hard because you've got to nail a role, but you've also got to be very good at another role as well. Now, you're going to see his score this week is a lot better, but let me explain it to you. Look at the Blues. There's goals, but you're also giving me something. And this is it. This is the most important. It's not tackles inside 50. It's the perceived pressure. And you actually find in the forward half, perceived pressure is far better than tackles because pressure creates differences in chances for turnover. And that is a real big case of Carlton. When we score from turnover, it's because the pressures are through the roof. It's not because of the tackles. The pressure acts are through the roof. And this guy here, he really took the game on, really made it tough for them. It's a proper small forwards game. And this leads me to my next point, and I mean this with all due respect to Matty Owies, because I have full respect. He's always in my 22. I love the bloke. The fact he is our most efficient small forward, the fact he has the most IQ of our small forwards, the fact he's in the right position at the right time, and the fact he puts in a 6 out of 10 at worst is a disgrace, really, to the development of the others. Because if I was Durdin, I'd be looking at this guy and going, I should be able to own this guy. I've been playing state league football since I was 12. So should Motlop. I know he's injured, but there should be noticeable. Either Owies has been hit on the head and someone told him he's Eddie Betts, but like it goes Eddie Betts, Matty Owies, Matt Wright. That's our top 3 small forwards in the last decade. Like, that is vomit. I love Matty Wright better than probably his own parents, but fuck me, he's in that conversation.
Yeah.
High. And I agree, Cat One's right. Motlop should be better, but in reality, you haven't seen Motlop this year. Like, you've seen him a little bit. So there's the problem. We should be in the conversation where Owies at this stage should be chance of being dropped, but you can't drop him. 3 goals again.
Do you know what I love about this? Do you know, I understand the sentiment completely. I think Owies suffers from a mild case of Pittoitis. People are really quick to get him out because he's not I guess now he's endearing himself more and more. He's always the first one to leave when we talk about when the small forwards are all available, who comes out. He's always the first one to get dropped. This is the reality. He's played 58 games. He's 27 years old. I think he thrives off that. Like, the more you doubt him, the more he keeps getting his job done. He's a really good professional.
And you know what, though? This is what annoys me about it, right? And I'm a huge advocate of Mr. Motlop. Like, remember the draft? Absolutely frothed him. The big thing with Owies, though, is he nails the basics. We're not even talking advanced forward craft when you... Like, no offense to Matty Owies, any small forward in the history of football who has made the grade should do them 3 goals, right? And that's no disrespect to him. The problem is, though, against other Carlton forwards, the other forwards wouldn't have been there. We're talking raw IQ here, raw basics, and Matty Owies has got it in abundance. And you know what? It makes me excited because if they've obviously taught a basketballer, right, to have the fundamentals to complement his natural skills, right? If we can do that with Motlop, fuck me, it's bets too, right? That's the level. But at this moment, full credit to him because he is top of the tree. He literally, after, I'm guaranteeing you now, Voss will go, Kerno, McKay. Oh, fuck, Martin's available this week. Oh, he goes on the whiteboard. Small forward. And Owies isn't allowed to fucking be rubbed out. Like, Owies will be number one.
100%. Oh, Martin's available. Oh, that's actually brilliant. That actually is brilliant.
Hey!
That is
I really
so
hope Voss is watching this and gone, who's fucking grassed me up?
A little bit more about Matt Owies' year as it's unfolding. So 2019 doesn't play a game. 2020, he plays one game. 21 plays 13 for 15 goals. 2022 plays 17 for 14 goals. Last year plays 18 games for 27 goals. He's played 9 games this year. He's kicked 14 goals. So he's just incrementally ticking along, getting better.
You know what he reminds me of, right? And it's funny because I remember we did our like best 18 at the start of the year. I'm sure it was on this show. I've been on that many shows.
Yeah,
I'm such a whore when it comes to shows. So I could be anyone. Do you know what I mean? To be honest, but I will say this: I remember having Owies in it, and like half the comments were like, "Oh, Owies is shit. If Owies is it," but honestly, if he had tattoos, he would be Dennis Armfield. Do you remember Dennis Armfield? Everyone used to froth Dennis Armfield, but all due respect to Dennis Armfield, he was pants, wasn't he? We just liked him because he looked like the only one who could legally be served alcohol and buy darts. But if we look back at it, Dennis Armfield was bobbins when you compare to other small forwards and other forwards. He's better than Armfield. He just looks generic and he gets the hate. But like, honestly, if it wasn't for him, our forward line would be Harry, Charlie, and then Cripps is probably the next goalkeeper. Like, he's literally the king of the small forward hill.
Mate, he kicked 27 last year. What would you classify as an A grade small forward? Not an A grade, but a good small forward that you can't drop. How many goals a year would that small forward need to get for you to say undroppable in a season?
I mean, for me, I think you're looking 30 plus for me. I want a goal and a bit of game. I mean, I look at Eddie Betts. Eddie Betts, what, for like, it was always 30, wasn't it? Like 40 would be brilliant. But I think bog standard 30 is par for the course.
He's here.
Yeah, exactly.
He's here. He exists.
Do you know what I mean? But it's like I say, Armfield had tattoos. Betts had the trickery, didn't he? And the dribble from the pocket. Like, Owies is just literally like, you've got the AFL small forwards book, and he's just decided to, you know, when you play 2K, the basketball game, and like some of your mates go mental on free shots and some of your mates go mental on rebounds. Matty Owies has just like maxed everything halfway.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, that's a shit build. But like legit, that's what he's done. Like, and everyone else has maxed out stupid stuff, and he's just nailed it.
It's a great analogy. I'm getting behind him, putting him on the thumbnail. There's no curse, there's no jinx, but mate, it takes a player to get on the thumbnail, particularly a player that's not a household name. I'm wrapped for him.
I mean, look, tell you what, look, we've already gone way over our budget on time because Pom just misses you all, and I'm just sad. I've got no life. But I mean, look at it. What's our leading goals this year? It'll be what? Charlie, Harry. Let's live in a world where there's no fucking. Let's just do it now. Live in a world where there's no Owies. What is it? Matt Cottrell 8.
I think Cripps kicked 9.
I brought it up. So Charlie Kerno 27, McKay 23. Oh, they haven't updated it from. Tell you what, I'll do it now. Carlton. I'll go to the champ start then if that website doesn't want to do it because they're miserable and horrible. Yeah, honestly, it's depressing reading. Like, prepared to find a cave. Charlie 27, Harry 23, right? Cottrell 8, Cripps 7, TDK 7. Elijah hasn't kicked a goal in like what feels like 6 weeks. And it's 6. Matt Kennedy. And then Corey Durdin. Honestly, fuck me. That's depressing.
25, 22. Yeah. No, okay. Yeah, that's right.
No, chat. I'll show you it. Just look, honestly, when you next go on Twitter to slag, Matty Owies out. Just imagine he's not there. Imagine this guy is not there. Look at that. 8, 7. He shouldn't be in the forward line. Look at Corey Durdin. Blake it. There is a world where if Owies didn't exist, Carroll playing half the games of Durdin is 2 goals off him.
Such a good good highlight for Owies. No, he's valuable.
Imagine.
And he's done it in the last 2 weeks against the highest of quality opponent. Top 4 opponent.
Just imagine if we lived in that world where our leading goal kicker, right, outside of our forwards, our next best forward, small forward, is 5 goals, and Pittonet just needs to double his total to catch him. like we wouldn't be laughing, Terry. We'd be fuming.
We would not be laughing. So a big up to Matty Owies. 8.5, mate. Huge. Well done. It's huge.
Matt Wright.
All right. George Hewitt. So let's talk about his game, and then I'll bring up what I want to bring up with George Hewitt.
Tell you what, he came on and, you know what you're going to get with him, but I want to say this. What a goal. Just quietly. What a goal. Oh, Georgie, fucking sharpshooter Hewitt. But straight away, look, was Ollie on the ground, 25% of the time? Less than that. Yep. 157 metres gained. He came into a game that wasn't his, and he had to get the ball forward and get the game moving forward. Won his centre clearances. For a whole game, he's already around AFL average. Ground balls already AFL average. I love George Hewitt because for me, what you see is what you get. He ain't going to be brilliant and a superstar, just industrious. And I loved how they messed around. They brought in Matt Kennedy, did the Cerra role. Elijah had a bit more minutes. Very important player is George Hewitt. I love him.
Yeah. Hasn't been spoken about because I think this is just the nature of the beast. I asked the question in my review, I think it was the real or the fan cam. I was like, why the hell was George Hewitt the sub? Such a shock to me. We played 3 games in 12 days. Thursday was the 3rd game in 12 days. So we're obviously managing that. You spoke about his back earlier in the show as well. That won't get highlighted. So we'll highlight it. What if it goes the other way and he gets hurt? And then it's on.
You know what annoys me, Terry, is you've been really intelligent with that. When people were complaining in the live, I just took the piss and said, we've all been asking for a point of difference and some pace coming off the pine.
3 games in 12 days. There's your reason.
No, fact, mate. I mean, you've got to remember that Sydney probably thought they pulled the wool over Carlton's eyes. And the fact we've got him this competitive every week. And if you watch Sydney play football, they're very workmanlike, especially in the middle. And what's beautiful, because if you watch Footy Abroad, humble brag time, I said Essendon would beat GWS because GWS are complete pushovers when it gets tough. What I respect about Sydney is they can play ugly and they can play beautiful. Yeah. And they will come in with the game plan of play ugly. Let's make it hard against the Blues. You need George Hewitt. George Hewitt needs to be there. So great idea by Carlton to rest him because I tell you what, if you were going into this game now with no Cerra and no Hewitt, you're putting a lot of pressure on players that haven't played and earned the yards. I love George Hewitt. He's honest. He's Matty Owies in the midfield.
True.
Does the basics well.
Yeah. Fundamentals win you games, win your premierships. He got a 6 for his game.
You know when he kicks a goal as well? I love the fact he looks surprised it went through.
Yeah. He's like, I don't do this often.
It's like he's shocked, and I rate that.
Yeah. So that's every player. We've still got plenty more slides to come, guys. There's 270 odd of you watching. If you haven't subscribed, now's the time. This content is free. You don't pay behind a paywall to watch it. But we do ask for you to get behind the channels, share it with a friend, hit the subscribe button, both on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel and the Pommy and Oz YouTube channel. That'd be more help than you could imagine if you are not subscribed. So that's that. Now, those of you who were here last week, you remember the team, what it looked like as a team. You know how many blues you need. You know how many yellows you need. You know the reds. This is the team for round 9. Look at it. What do we notice? What do we notice? Thank you, Mrs. Pete.
Well, you remember last week there was a shit ton of yellows, there was a shit ton of reds, and the big thing I said, there was no blues. So remember the secret: every red we need a blue.
Yep.
And then the dream is everyone's green.
Hmm.
This week you got it. Then they're not amazing scores. We've had scores here where there's thousands of bigger scores than this and a core average. But what you saw this week was a team rounded performance. And that is, again, Michael Voss's ethos. Team defense, team attack. This is probably as close to Voss's template. I'd say if you ask Voss, that's probably the template of what he wants to see these boys play, particularly that first quarter. That first quarter is probably the Michael Voss blueprint. If you asked him to visualize it and show us it, that's probably the dream.
Sandy, thank you very much for the $15.
My brother.
That is a much appreciated. Yeah. No, straight off the bat, there were a lot of yellows last week, and there were, I think, 4 reds from memory. I think Cowan and Durdin were 2 of them.
Yeah, Fantasia.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, and core positions as well, like this week as well, core positions in green. Do you know what I mean? Like this is good. Like this is good football all around.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, someone just mentioned here, who was that? The first quarter is our DNA. I think the first quarter is, if you could pin a quarter up for the boys to look at and say, boys, that was us at our most mature, and our best offensively and defensively. We've had better quarters when it comes to scoring. I don't think we've had a better quarter. No, we haven't had a better quarter. Maybe the prelim first quarter, but defending and the way in which we moved the ball up the field against the top, the best defense that you can come up against. So I was stoked. Now the fourth in the last 15 minutes needs some work. But I feel like this is a game you take what happened in totality rather than isolate the last 10, 15 minutes. You take the entire game and you say, like, you just got to keep chipping away and getting better.
Yeah, and like I say, go back to my analogy. This is very 2023 season, just probably up 20%. But I think Voss is finding the right tools. The players are finding the right tools. And it's going to take a while. I do think it's going to take a while because you've got to remember Voss is, I think, is floating. It's evolving. And you look this week, this is it. The players were helped out by Voss. This is Voss's best game. He had to make some changes. And he got it right. Hollands switched wings and came back. I think that makes sense. Akers is good defensively and offensively. He probably can be sacrificed. You've got to protect Hollands a bit. But then he brought in McGovern behind him. Sensible, because you know Ollie is going to be targeted. It makes sense. If I was the opposition coach, there's 4 players on this team I'd be targeting every week. He's one of them. So put Marchbank McGovern behind him and say, go on. When you beat him, though, look who you're fucking kicking to. Like, yeah, you might beat him. And that's good coaching, good structure, good tactics. And before you know it, we'll be there. And I agree, Terry. I reckon if you ask Voss to draw what his game plan looks like, it's probably the first quarter. Everything worked. Everything looked good.
Yeah. So this is...
Look at that!
Wow, run through this. What's going on here? This is the total team for 4 quarters, right?
Yeah, so if you remember last week, we saw like that was off up the left. It's like Marc Pittonet had a picnic on the left wing last week. This week, you can see Carlton have really generated a great spread of blue, which is where the ball's been taken. And these are really important numbers, chat. So last week, we would double the amount of touches And I remember I said 3 was the happy medium. I don't mind you being 3 either side. When you're 7, I think we were 6.85 more touches to have a scoring shot. You got big fucking issues. It means you're fucking about with the ball. This week, Carlton were a lot more diligent. And that number was actually -1 before the 4th. Carlton started to mess around with it in the 4th. This is a really important numbers, though. Defensive half scores against the number 1 defensive half scoring side. To be -1 shows how hard our forward craft was to create them turnovers, and against a very strong turnover side, to be just 4 down, which was 90% made up in the 4th when we'd run out of legs and were holding on, was really good. But the stoppage scores, again, this is what I mean. I don't think this week Carlton's stoppage game was remarkable like it was last year, but this is more organic and more healthy, creates more opportunities. And this is a real well balanced. Look at that yellow all in the midfield. That is a good side, a side that's willing to go down the left, down the right, slight orange in the centre, slight orange on the left wing as well, showing Carlton are willing to sex it up and change it, right? Now you've got the benchmark. Now you've got the benchmark. And next week against Sydney, you can't be one-dimensional against them because they're I'd say Horse is probably the best coach in the league at adapting a game plan when things happen. So if you become one-dimensional against them, sayonara. So Carlton are going to have to do this probably. If we win that game, big pom call. There'll be like a little red willy-shaped thing going from the right wing towards the left wing. We're going to have to switch and change it up. But when we win next week, that's the thing we'll see. But look, role players this week in the Pomegram, effort high. They were very low against against Collingwood last week.
Yeah, no, they were. Let's take a look. Well, also one more thing before we take a look at the players of the game. What a 5-week stretch this will be after Sydney. GWS, Geelong, Collingwood, Melbourne, Sydney. GWS, Geelong, Collingwood, Melbourne, Sydney. We can come out of that 5-game stretch. We're currently 2-2. If we can come out of that stretch 3-2, huge. 2-3, not a disaster. 1-4, it was looking likely before the Melbourne game, if you remember the commentary. It's a tough stretch of the season. It's now. We're in the thick of it.
And I think we're being kissed on the willy a little bit. I know people are talking about I don't buy this like fixture thing. Like I've seen people like complain about our fixtures and then say, "What we're not a worse side than Essendon." Of course we're not. Essendon have got an easier draw than us. I actually like the draw we've got now because I think you actually see historically the rounds before the bye are when the Premiership teams really cement and kind of it's around now they send what we call warning shots to the AFL. Richmond in their year did it. It was about this time warning shots were fired of we're working it out. Are you ready for us? And I think we've got it's been a really good learning experience for us. We've played some top teams who are way ahead in their comfortability with their game plan. Great time to play Sydney, right? Win, lose or draw. Great time to learn. But then you've got Gold Coast who you finish this thing with all due respect to Gold Coast and Essendon and Port after this. These are sides that if we're serious, we beat. We beat. We're far superior to Port. We're far superior to Gold Coast. These sides we're starting to beat up on. We're at that stage where we should be able to create separation. And Essendon, as good as they are, right, as good as their results have been, they're a one-trick pony, and that trick happens to be our master. We've got a doctorate in their one trick. We own it. So get through these. Beat Sydney next week. You're there. And then you look at our run home, man. That's the tough bit, the run home. You want to look at you don't want too many challenging games then. And we've got it's a real favourable run home. I mean, we've got St Kilda last game of the season, Mickey Mouse. Eagles, Mickey Mouse. Hawthorn, all due respect, Mickey Mouse. The last game of our regular season really is Collingwood, round 21. But we got North, we got doggies, man doggies. Bevel will be gone by then. Port Adelaide, we play at home. And the only real tough game we've got is Geelong at the G, which I think we owe them. Richmond are the shell of themselves. And how many times do I have to tell you? GWS are only good in mental people's heads. I tell you what, honestly, they are as soft as shite when it comes against a tough team. They haven't got that hard underbelly. They play sexy football. Sexy football is great until you get a right hook.
There was another thing as well. I was aware of this because it got brought up by, I think it was Jake and Luke in Footy Abroad. They were talking about, every team will play the 3 games in 12 days. Every team will have their turn at it. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. Every team has lost that game bar us. So the D's lost that 3rd game in 12 days against the Lions. The Saints lost that game against the Dogs, and the Pies lost that game against the Saints. Each of those 3 losses was the 3rd game in the 12 days for that team. I think we're the only team so far this year to win that game. Correct me if there's somebody else. So
I think you're right, actually. And I also will say this. I think when you're losing, it's best to have a short turnaround. Working with golf pros and stuff, when they're playing shit, they want to play more because of the theory of you're 1 game away from being good.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you can overanalyze a loss. I think the worst place to lose is the week before the bye.
Yeah.
Because you've got a week to sleep on it. Where, with these players, they had 4 days. Okay, dust yourself down. Collingwood was a disgrace. But are we going to sit here and cry, or are we preparing for the next test? And I will say this. I think if you gave Carlton a 9-day break, they lose against Melbourne.
Yeah. Yeah, way too much. Way too much. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting point.
That's why I'm looking forward to quite a short turnaround this week. It's only 6 days, isn't it?
Yeah. 6 days. When did the Swans play?
Yesterday. All my troubles seem so far away. Oh, no, they played Friday, didn't they? Friday night.
Yeah.
So they've got a day less, but they are at home. And I think that's... I really think that's the game. I watched Sydney hard this week. I really enjoyed the Sydney game. Watched Fremantle. I know Fremantle got battered.
Yeah.
But I think they'll watch that Fremantle game and go, you know what, though? What they're shit at, we're good at.
Yeah.
And the key to it was the way they played. The way Fremantle entered was Carlton versus Geelong. Kick and hope, and it came back. They know, kick like that, game over. Kick like we did this week, bang. We can win it.
I love that we're playing the best teams in the comp. I think it makes you a better side. There can be no papering over cracks argument. You're playing the best sides in the competition who at any given moment in a 10-minute period can put as many goals on you because they're that good. So I think it's making us better.
Mate, facts. And tell you what, I'm telling you now, the momentum, if they win this, when they win this game, the momentum, man, the media are going to be fucking, they'll be one of them 1980s cartoon caricatures of fucking Cripps.
Yeah.
In the paper going, flaggers.
All right, let's take a look at the Horizon Finance Group player of the game. We've got a tie. No surprise. Batman and Robin.
Imagine being a team that has that midfield.
Look at our hair. I've got a little bit of Cripps' hair. You got a bit of Walsh's hair, mate.
I don't mind being Walsh.
You're the daddy, though. You're the daddy, though. So maybe you're Cripps.
That's why we switched.
Yeah. We're interchangeable.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think since Joe Murphy have we had 2 players that can perform like this. And all due respect, total different players. But I'm just saying, of that impact, that ilk, both of these, when they're on song, fuck me, it's tasty, innit? And remember who Murphy and fucking Judd were kicking to?
Satanta O'Halpine. Bless him. Bless him.
Can you imagine? Murphy and Judd must watch these forwards and be like, bastards.
True. No, I've never thought of that like that before.
Bastards.
Make a really good point. Yeah. You got a few other slides here. What's this one? This is the leader, the average rating per game.
Yeah, look at that. Just oscillating under just
That
a
is-
lazy 8.8 per game. Like,
Can you put that into perspective and explain how hard it is to score above an 8?
Basically means the guy's taking the piss, to be honest. I mean, what it is we're talking about a player that is upper echelons of his role. And we are in a really privileged spot. Like some of the midfielders nowadays, like, wow, you've got Matty Rowell who is taking the mick. You've got Nick Dacos who can do remarkable things. But one thing that separates all of them from Walsh is Walsh's consistency. And I think it goes against him. I do think it goes against him. I think Tom Mitchell is another example of this. People take the piss out of Tom Mitchell and go, he's not damaging. And my argument is he gets the ball 30 times and gives it to someone who is, though. That's the problem. Right. Sam Walsh is a victim of that. You've come to expect it now. Like now when he doesn't have 30 touches, you're like, shit game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But then there's players in the league who have like Bontempelli will have 21 touches and kick a goal and everyone's like, oh, I wish he had someone to help him.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where Sam Walsh is now. His benchmark is so high. It's like Usain Bolt. If Usain Bolt doesn't run under 9.9 seconds, you think he's done a hammy. He's a victim of it. And I think it works against you because he doesn't fluctuate. What he does every week is what you see. And remember last week, he was what, 7.5 from memory?
Yeah.
And like his numbers were still fucking stupid. Like he is a dirty player. And I will say maybe Walsh's best game he'll ever have might not be as wow as everyone else's, but I always judge my greats on is their worst game one that you vomit at? And Walsh is always his worst game is one that you're quite envious of.
Yeah, it's the body of work. That's what it is. So
was in a wheelchair 6 weeks ago as well, chat.
The horizon, the riser. What is the horizon? What is the riser? Is this the greatest rise of rating from the previous week?
So this is, if you remember the preview that I did, but also
do you remember?
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember? But we talked about how this algorithm expects people to do stuff. So we talked about victim of body of work. Hollands, a victim of being on the left flank, the graveyard. This is a massive, massive improvement. The algorithm was exactly excited. Hunter's just come up with the best name for this award.
Wow. Well done.
Bravo. And that's basically what it means. So this is something that we were watching. The algorithm was like, fucking hell, drug test him. That's basically what it means. It's like the algorithm going, well done. We did not expect your output on this. And especially, you know what his expected score was when you match him up against Ed Langdon? 2.5. It would have been the lowest score ever recorded.
Cop that algorithm. You dirty dog.
Do you know what I mean? There you are. Look at him. So worthy Horizon winner of week 10.
And the final slide for the night. This is the Rucks.
Our Rucks. Look!
Look at that. Sheesh. Look at that. That's just.
Look.
Well, it's the template. It's the template of what you draw to when they're not always going to perform. They're going to fluctuate. That's life and that's footy. But now I think we've seen the template of what the two of them looks like when it's working well. So when it falls away, you can rank it against.
Yeah, they look like a Victoria's Secret model going through, one of them scanners. That's what you'd see.
That's very good.
Hey. That one's for free. That you don't get that on Fox Footy. But I mean, look again. It's good to see. I mean, you're starting to see the development of these two as a pair, and we keep saying it. Balance. I remember saying it in my preview this week that I was going to bore the shit out of you by using the B word about finding the balance of when to attack, when to defend, when to go forward, when to sit back, when to go advance, when not to, when to kick, when to handball. You're starting to see, even in positioning, balance is starting to occur. And look at this. Like, they've played the same places. Look, them heat maps are almost the same. just more onus in certain areas, but you can see that they're starting to understand their role. And it's going to be, I hope we see Pittonet, because it's only a finger surgery. I mean, surely when you're nearly 200 centimeters tall and 100 kegs, you don't have a week off because of finger surgery, do you?
Yeah, I mean, you put a glove on, mate, get back in there. But if not, then Tom's going to have a big, big game to play against Brody Grundy. Massive, massive test.
I do think Brody Grundy is a big. I wouldn't say it's advantage TDK, but I'd say TDK would relish that matchup. Agreed. Because of how they play.
Do you think? Let's just say Pitt was no issue and he was fit and available, because it's working in the last couple of weeks. You know, depending on how you see it. Is this a matchup against the Swans where you say you definitely want the 2, or is this a matchup where you say it would be more advantageous with the 1?
I think the way they're playing, I think you'd have to keep it up, wouldn't you? I mean, I look at like one ruck things, and Brody Grundy he's an anomaly because he kind of doesn't deteriorate. He's a bit like Max Gawn. Like Max Gawn's best quarter was the 4th. Grundy's best quarter was the 4th as well. So that's where you probably want to pay 2 ruckmen, because it's tough because they're not going to flag. I think 2 ruckmen's probably, for me, 1 ruckman's probably like Dogs.
Right.
Probably like Gold Coast, where you know that it's just workhorses you're playing. Tim English, I think he's a good ruckman, but I think you can work him around the ground, and when he has too much to do, he struggles. I think that's probably where there's an argument for 1. This week, though, I just feel of all the great ruckmen, I don't mind TDK versus on his own versus this guy. I think TDK would relish it because I think he can beat him around the ground, which is half the battle with these guys.
Yeah.
I think TDK would be quite happy with that matchup if you asked him.
John said Grundy might be out. I have not heard of anything about that. There was an eye issue. I don't know. I want Grundy in.
Well, if you want to see, someone asked what Grundy looks like. That's what you're dealing with.
Oh, wow. Is that last week?
No, that's today.
That's this round. Yeah, okay. Wow.
That's what you're dealing with. So you can see there, between our ruckman, we've made the heat map. So this is why when it fucking winds me up when people are like, oh, why isn't Pittonet like Grundy? Oh, gone. These heat maps are fucking 2 people. This is why they're so fucking good, because they are 2 players in 1.
Wow. I think that's a really good graphic to show. Yeah.
Like,
that is insane, man. What is that?
Like, Grundy's a freak, man. I'll say this. I know this is a bold call, but I would always pick Grundy over Gawn.
Why is that?
I just think Grundy's work around the ground is far except. I think Gawn's incredible, but over the last 15 years, there has been bobbins forwards at Melbourne. So I think that highlights him as a footballer. I think if you put Harry and Charlie, you wouldn't see Max Gawn forward. Ergo, I don't think you'd see as many sensational moments.
Wow.
Because they'd have proper forwards. Grundy mentally went to Melbourne, but I think you look at him at Sydney, instantly they've gone from very good side to almost unbeatable.
Yeah.
I think Collingwood made the biggest mistake when they started playing 2 ruckmen. When Cameron came in, I think that was the death note. I think Grundy, as horrible as it sounds, you work this guy into the ground. Like, do what you did with Nick Nat. Play him. When his legs finally go, send him off into retirement with a big paycheck, build a statue. Grundy, for me, is complete. You watch him in that midfield, man. It's sick. He's actually nauseating. Like, Grundy, for me, phenomenal player. Like, phenomenal. Yeah, right. And Collingwood, that's the one negative on Collingwood I'll give. Destroyed his career with this nonsense of they tried to have 2 ruckmen. Like, we're forced to. They had the best ruckman in the league and were like, let's play 2 ruckmen. Why not? Like, why not? Darcy Cameron, he's got 2 first names. Let's play him. Be banter. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wish they could tell me why the fuck they did it.
Got 2 first names.
Like, I wish someone. Like, why they fucking did it, because I think they would have been a lot more fearsome than they are now. I think that's still a weak area of them.
Yeah. Can I just say the trumpet is good for my mental health.
But yeah, look, legit. So you think Gorns just keep Grundy's in your head? It's almost like ours. There's 2 ruckmen.
Mm.
That's scary, isn't it? Like, one man can do that.
Wow. Was that the best rating show we've ever done?
It just shows how much I've missed having the extra day that I've managed to drag it out to 3 hours.
I like having a lot of time to go through it. A lot. Like, I really enjoy it.
We'll keep Joe in London.
Yeah. Almost Blues Brothers will be on tomorrow night after the BA show. They'll be on at 8 p.m. Or
is he doing it from England?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is.
That's so sad.
Why?
Just get on the beers, man. You're back home. You won't get proper beer for another 2 years until you go over there.
The man is committed to the craft.
What time? Oh, fuck, it'll be well. What time is it? 7 o'clock here.
Well, 8 p.m. here.
Fucking 7 in the morning. To be fair, I'd probably do it.
You would.
I'm sad too.
Yeah. So, ladies and gents, let us know. What do you think of the show? If you enjoyed it, if you enjoyed the content, get around us. Hit the subscribe button. Share it with a friend. Because I feel like, I learned so much from this show. I really do. I watched the game a little differently. I think looking at heat maps gives context to a player's game and a team's game so much more. Like, even that discussion just now about Grundy and you visualize what it is. I've always been more of a visual learner. You can tell me something, I can read something, but if you show it to me with pretty colors and numbers, it hits my brain a little bit better. So, let us know.
246 people have watched that pretty much continuously as well for 3 hours. Like,
True.
Jesus, there's something wrong with us. Yeah, honestly, that is a cry for help that we've done that for 3 hours.
And all we ask is just click a button.
I'm telling you now, before this, if I said, "Oh, what do you do Sunday, mate?" 7 o'clock till 10, we just looked at graphs, some people running around talking about it. I would have been like, "Fucking hell, mate, get a life."
No, that was epic. Pommy, thanks as always for putting that together. Thanks to you guys and girls in the chat for being here. Sorry about the studio. So the internet cut out here. So I've done this whole show on hotspot with the laptop. So the audio would not have been as crisp. The camera might have been okay. If you can tell that maybe I was a little bit antsy without the neon light behind, but hey.
He was a dickhead before the show, just so you know. He was proper. It was like after Essendon. That's what he was like. Like I thought I'd gone back in time.
Yeah, I just, but hey, such is life, mate. Shit doesn't go your way. You just got to move on with it and make it work. So, is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. See you guys tomorrow night. Have a great Sunday night. Have a good sleep. Go Blues.
Go Blues.